Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session of Quispamsis Town Council for deliberations of the 2023 budget. Could I have the approval of the agenda, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote now. Vote. Motion carried 7-0. I'd like to request Councillor Bigger to do the treaty acknowledgement and moment of reflection, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik, Maliseet, and Micmac peoples, whose ancestors, along with Passamaquoddy tribes, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this moment to pay respect to the elders, past and present, and the descendants of this traditional territory. And may we remind ourselves of the important work we have before us today. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interests of our community, which we are here to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. In accordance with Section 9.1 of the procedural bylaw, number 033, Councillor Locke will be attending virtually today. I'd like a motion, please, of Council to resolve into Committee of the Whole, and that will be open to the public. The reason for this is that it allows for a more robust, less formal discussion. It's been moved by Councillor Thompson. Do we need a seconder for that?
Yes.
And seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Before we begin our budget deliberations, I just wanted to say that the past several months, we have witnessed an escalation in our daily lives in the costs of everything. The economy has changed. Supply chains have stalled. And now we have to do things differently. The provincial government has increased property assessments throughout the province. The increase is significant and will be felt by all property owners, including most people at this table, and will be felt by all property owners throughout our town, as well as business and commercial owners. In an effort to offset property assessment increases it is our focus as we deliberate through our operating and capital responsibilities and the obligations set in our debentures and fixed costs and our newly gilded provincial additional costs through the RSC, it is our intent to reduce our tax rate. As recently identified in our strategic plan, it is the goal of Quispamsis to strive to continue being a welcoming, vibrant community of choice, delivering the high level of services that our residents expect, while recognizing the constraints, but continuing to build our town. We are a growing town. Growth cannot be stopped. It is a sign of a town that responds to the needs of a community. As a community grows, service delivery must expand. Plowing, trails, development and maintenance of trails, planning demands, protective services, all the services we provide must expand as Quispamsis grows. This includes vehicles, machines, training, and most importantly, human resources. As a service delivery provider, we must put safety first for our citizens, providing adequate police and fire protection. And we must provide amenities, roads, and facilities that contribute both to the physical and mental health of all. It is true, Quispamsis is not the town it was. In many ways, it is better. It is improved. Quispamsis staff and council have responded to our growth. It has become more culturally diversified, and it has provided more services that we must continue to provide for. As we grow, We must adhere to the direction provided in our strategic plan and move forward. Today, we will use our strategic plan to guide us as we grow forward while considering the challenges and pressures that we must deal with. Today, we have an open budget process so that the transparency allows for all to hear how we are moving forward in the town of Quispamsis. Thank you. I will now move to item number 4, proposed 2023 Town of Quispamsis budget. The town treasurer to provide an overview of the budget package. Ms. Krista Brandon, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, councilors, staff, everyone watching online. So first, what I'm going to just go through and do is just go through our 2023 proposed budget package for council review. So in your package, it is this document. There's an index for it, so when I'm referencing page numbers, I'm referencing a page number up at the top, kind of right-hand corner here. So the first document in the package is our proposed general operating fund budget, sources of changes document. So that is page 1. The next piece within the budget package is our 2023 fee increases for our community services. So those are all of our rates. So that is the next piece of the package. Then next, pages 5 through 14 will be budget summaries by department. So those are the ones with the brown heading up at the top that kind of gives you that detail by department. Then starting on page 15 is our, I'll just wait for her to get there. And so this here is our proposed general operating budget fund, the detail by line item. So that is at every GL kind of level within the budget, and that will take us through to page 24. Then starting at page 25, you'll see our the start of our 5-year general capital fund. So that takes us from 2023 through to 2027. So you'll see that there is the 5-year capital plan for general included. That takes us to page 31. Then page 32 is our civic relations. So that was what went to council last week and is included in this budget as part of the budget package. Then starting on page 33, we'll have our proposed utility operating budget fund summary. That goes through and details out any of the rate changes plus the summary level of the budget. Page 34 has our 2023 utility rate increases for our sewer and our water utility. Page 35 is a department summary for the utility department as a whole. Page 36 through 38 is the detailed line item budget for the utility fund as well. And then starting at page 39 through 43 is the 5-year proposed utility capital fund expenditures. So in essence, this, the presentation that we'll be doing will be referencing everything included in this. This is kind of our budget package. This is our documentation. We'll then take this and put it onto a provincial sheet and submit this to the province once we've gone through our budget process. A few of the other items within your package, there's 2 for information purposes only, just our borrowing power spreadsheets where we kind of track our debentures and different things that we have kind of going on. So we kind of track all of those and update it for historical information and then project into the future. So those are 2 pieces for information only. And then the next piece that we kind of just wanted to go through and spend a little bit of time before we kind of get into everything is one of the changes this year with the budget is the change or the potential change that we have as a municipality to change our the ratio on the non-residential properties. So included in our proposed budget at this point in time is administration is recommending that we do go up to the 1.7 ratio, and that is included in our budget. Nancy's just handing out an updated non-residential kind of tax summary sheet just to kind of give you some information and help you kind of understand this kind of change that's happening this year. So I will just kind of go through it, and we can reference this sheet kind of throughout the day today as well. It may come up at different points within our presentations or potentially even through the debate piece. So I'll just walk you through. So the top light colored green piece is our residential rate. First starts with our 2022 residential rate. Our 2023, with it being the same rate but with new assessments, is the next kind of column. And then the final kind of column is the 2023 our reduced tax rate, which administration is putting forward at the 1.2849. So on that line, then you could see that for an assessed value starting at 300,000, with the 10% kind of cap at the assessment, because again, a lot of our properties within Quispamsis will be maxed at that 10% because the assessment was higher than that. So if you add in that assessment and then add in our lower tax rate for 2023, what this means is that a house averaging about $330,000 in 2023 assessment would be, their taxes would be increasing by $291 or 6.7%. And again, this is with a reduced tax rate, but again, the increased assessment. Historically, our non-residential was at 1.5 times our residential rate. So we've included that in the blue section there for information. The province also has, starting back in 2022, started to decrease their portion of the provincial non-residential rate. So in 2022, it reduced by 5%. 2023, it'll be reducing by 5% again, and in 2024, it'll be reducing by another 5% for a total of about a 15% reduction over those 3 years. The section in green details the non-residential at a 1.6 rate. And then the bottom in the kind of orangey color is the non-residential at the 1.7 times the residential rate. So at 1.6, you can see that non-residential would be seeing about the same increase as the residential of about 6.7%. And at 1.7, it's about 9.5%. In our budget right now, we have included it at the 1.7, so that's about $220,000 that's in our budget. If we were to go at the 1.6, we'd want to find another $109,000 to kind of offset that potentially. But again, just some new information, hopefully in a format that is easily digestible for everyone, and everyone can kind of understand it. And we'll kind of, we'll take questions, we can answer things throughout, but I just wanted to highlight this morning just before we get into our discussions. So if that is all, I think we will get started on our presentations. Any questions at this point?
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Councillor Bigger, please.
I just wanted to confirm that the package on paper is synonymous with what we would have up to date on the iPads. Is that, do we know that for sure? Just because I've marked up my budget information on the iPad, and I just want to be sure I don't,
So this document has changed.
okay.
Potentially, I don't know if it was updated, so that's what the handout is for, but everything else should
I
be.
just meant the general package.
Yeah,
Okay,
everything
thank you.
else should be.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Okay, Ms. Brandon, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. Just one quick question. I know we can do any variation. It doesn't have to be 1.6, 1.7, could be 1.55, right? We don't
Could be
have-
1.4, could be 1.5, could be 1.455, could be anything between 1.4 and 1.7.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Deputy Mayor Scrier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for being here, Krista, and taking us through this. I know it's a lot. I just wanted to confirm on year 2024 for the reduction of the provincial portion, it's the same as 2023. Is that just purely mathematical that it ends up being like 1.96? I'm having a hard time reading it. 1.966.
So,
Exactly the same as 2023.
so 2024 isn't shown on here?
Oh, okay. I thought that was
Only
2020.
it was just with the 2022 tax rate and the 2023 updated tax rate. So 2024 isn't on there. There would be a further reduction to, like, I think it's 1.86 is what it'll be in 2024.
So, okay. So if we wanted to have the same tax rate for residential and commercial, not the same, but percentage-wise, then we would have to find the difference, 109,000.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Welcome, Mr. Kennedy, Acting CAO of the Town of Quispamsis.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good morning, Deputy Mayor, councillors, staff. It's an exciting day here for us at the Town of Quispamsis, as it is for council. I hate to use a prop, but this is a 182-page document that has been put together, so certainly it goes without saying how much work is involved to come up with this much information for you. I think the town and this council deserve credit for this open and transparent budget process that we implemented a number of years ago. It's generally a full-day process, and I think it's important to have this opportunity to share from an administrative point of view what our plans are for 2023, and to share that with council and to share that with the public as well. So we've been doing this in a very open and transparent way, and I think our residents and the people that we serve very much appreciate that, because they know what we're up to and what our plans are, and if they have the wherewithal to pore over that 182-page document, they'll know exactly what is in the 2023 budget. As the mayor suggested in her opening comments, Quispamsis has definitely changed. We are not the quaint, sleepy little town that we once were. Our population, according to the 2021 census, is 18,768 people. That makes us the 6th largest municipality in New Brunswick. And just in doing that math, if you're wondering how we are number 6, that's behind the 3 big cities in the south, Dieppe and Riverview. This year, Quispamsis embarked on a strategic plan for our community. That was a very robust discussion with the consultants, and there were conversations had with this council, with our staff, and with what we were calling key informants through our community from different walks of life, who were able to come forward and talk about what they see in Quispamsis and how they see Quispamsis becoming over the next 5 years. From that, we developed a new vision. Quispamsis is proud to be a vibrant, active community surrounded by natural beauty, offering a quality of life driven by exceptional services, amenities, and programs. And that's something that we think about every day, and how our residents view this community as well. And the vision ties into the mission, which is council, management, and staff collectively provide community-focused service excellence and a forward-thinking commitment to sustainable growth, responsible governance, and engaged, connected residents. And I think we've shown that every day we all live the vision and the mission of this community, whether we are elected officials or staff, some of whom are here today to see what this budget is all about for 2023. We are still affected by COVID, despite what some may want us to believe. COVID is still very much a part of our lives. Hearing that there are people that we know that have been struck with COVID over the last couple of days as well, so we are still affected by that. We have made changes as we've seen loosening of some restrictions as well, and one of the things certainly that impacted this council chamber is the removal of the glass partitions that had separated the members from one another. And of course, when COVID first struck, we were working on a virtual basis for a long time. Then we came back because of the safety precautions that were put in place. But council and staff talked about that and decided that we were comfortable in returning to the way you see the council chamber today, and that is there is no more glass partitions. Of course, when council and members of the public walk into town hall and at the Qplex, there are still safety barriers in place. That's a combination of leftover from COVID, and it's also some additional levels of security that we didn't have there in the past, and we think that that's important, so those are going to stay in place. So as we move away from COVID, we are on our way to the return of a kind of normal. We did see some big events come back to the Qplex this year, including KV High School's prom, Les Jeux de l'Acadie, which was postponed a couple of times, and we were really excited to be able to co-host that event with the City of St. John. And the Qplex was used for the opening ceremonies, which was a spectacular show. Rave reviews, as we always hear from the Qplex staff, and how great they are to deal with when people come in with some lavish ideas is probably one way to put it, and we always find a way to make it work. So thanks to the folks down there as well. It was a huge event. The Premier attended that as well. So that was a great event, and it's great to have the Qplex back with people in it. Of course, the Kennebecasis Legion will be hosting their Remembrance Day ceremony next month at the Qplex, and this council has graciously donated that facility for that community event over the last number of years, and that will continue on certainly into the future. The Fundy Tide swim meet was held in June as well, so it's not quite normal, but we certainly are getting there. And as we talk about the Qplex and things that we're looking forward to, there is a National Sport Tourism Conference that unfolds next week in Edmonton. We will be represented at that as well. And those are the conversations and discussions that we have with decision makers from across the country that are able to bring events to our community. And certainly we've had some high profile national and international events in the past, and we are looking forward to landing a few more through those discussions next week. Those things don't happen overnight. When we look back to the TELUS Cup, I think the very first email that germinated that process until the TELUS Cup actually came to town was the better part of 5 years. So it takes a long time for these things to come together, but certainly at the end of the day, they're well worth the wait. I'm not going to steal the thunder from our Director of Community Services and our Director of Engineering and Works in terms of looking at all the exciting projects and things that this council had approved in the 2020 budget that were implemented or done over the past year. I just wanted to do a couple of high-level notes. Of course, one of the things that is affecting this council is the fact that your term has been extended as part of the local governance reform. You signed up for 4 years. Well, surprise, you got 5. So this council will be serving us until 2026, and we look forward to that additional year and continuing to work with you. As I mentioned, we did have our strategic plan that was launched this year. We actually have an RFP that's out right now so that we're going to be able to further implement that plan and make sure that we live it every day based on those 4 strategic themes of infrastructure management, commitment to community, economic development, and capacity building. And certainly council has noticed that in our staff reports that you see at regular council meetings, where that fits in terms of the strategic plan is always identified as well. Some of the roadwork projects this year, certainly Means Cove was a very successful project, the first phase of what's going on down at Means Cove, and you can see a picture there of the roadwork that was completed there. Goes without saying that probably the biggest piece of construction work this summer wasn't actually ours, but it was the Gondola Point Arterial. That, of course, is owned and operated and maintained by the Provincial Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, but without question, that was a very trying time for our residents, and certainly we appreciated their patience. It basically goes back to that line that there are two seasons in New Brunswick: construction and winter. We have new courts down at the Qplex, new tennis courts, new pickleball courts. We built 2 new courts on the pickleball side of things, which has become a huge sport and is only going to continue to grow. But because the 2 existing courts were replaced with a new surface as well, basically we have 4 new courts at the Qplex for pickleball, net 2 new courts, and they are being used all the time. And if you haven't had the request yet from residents, I expect you're going to hear it soon. We really appreciate the new courts. The surface is great. When can we get lights? That's not in this budget, but I suspect at some point down the road, that's something that you're going to hear. The photo on the right is the water tower. I hesitate to use technical utility jargon or lingo, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to say that I find that this is super cool. It looks like it's photoshopped. It's not. That actually is our water tower now with the Quispamsis logo, and that really is our brand, which is important in this day and age to project the image that we want to. We did have the debate about whether to include "there is no other" on that, but we thought it wouldn't be legible, but I think it looks fantastic, and thanks to the Director of Engineering and Works and his team on the utility side, that was a big project in refurbishing that this year. So, as we look to the 2023 budget in this 182-page document, there are certainly some challenges that not only face the town of Quispamsis, but all municipalities and private business as well. Inflation is certainly first and foremost among them. Supply chain issues, as the mayor alluded to in her opening comments. Things are over budget, there are delays. Certainly we work diligently to try to avoid those things, but just because of the way of the world right now, that has been a challenge. Local governance reform is a serious challenge for us. We were fortunate in terms of the town of Quispamsis did not get bigger. We didn't change any of our boundaries. We didn't add more people to our community, and because of that, we're spared having to go to a municipal election next month. That's not the case in many municipalities in New Brunswick and some of the newly merged ones, and certainly the most glaring local example of that is the town of Hampton. Those folks were elected, as this council was, in May of 2021, and now 18 months later, all of them are forced to go through another election if they so choose to reoffer. So it's interesting to see how the provincial government looked at those things. For an example, is this council did not have any specific changes from an electoral point of view. You get another year on your term, and the people in Hampton are forced to go back and run and vote 18 months after the most recent election. So that's a challenge for them. But even though we don't feel that impact, certainly, as has been debated, and debate is probably not the word to use because debate suggests opposing viewpoints. I would say it's been discussed at this council table because council has been united in opposing some of these changes, in particular the capital cost inclusion that the provincial government is imposing on the regional facilities. We are pushing forward, and the mayor sent a letter with her counterparts, Mayor Doucette from Hampton and Mayor Grant from Rothsay on Friday afternoon to Minister Alain. Pushing to have the Trade and Convention Center removed from the regional facility funding scheme. The Fredericton Convention Center is owned by the City of Fredericton. It is not subjected to regional cost sharing. We question why the Trade and Convention Center is. We question, with the new definition of sport, recreational, and cultural facilities, how the Trade and Convention Center fits that. And that language comes directly from the provincial government. So in 1998, perhaps it did. In 2023, our position is that it does not. So that is certainly something that is impacting this council and this budget and the mandated services that the province has imposed on us. We don't have a whole lot of say in those, but if the Trade and Convention Center were to be removed, we would consider that a big win for sure. Recruitment and retention of staff, certainly as has been discussed around this table and within the media as well. When we were the first municipality in New Brunswick to implement a compressed work week in the spring, we weren't the first to announce it, but we were the first out of the gate to actually implement it. We received a lot of attention, positive attention for that, I would suggest. There were a lot of media calls, national talk shows on the CBC, local newspaper, social media, and for the most part, I think it was well received. And as I said at a recent council meeting, if our residents didn't know that we were doing that, they wouldn't know that we were doing it. Absolutely no examples of any sort of negative impact on our residents or business owners whatsoever. And in fact, you could argue that it's quite the opposite, because we did extend our hours, that we are open to the public and available to take phone calls with someone here. So we've actually enhanced that service, and with a couple of people who joined the town staff this summer, replacing people who had left, they told us right up front that the compressed week was something that enticed them to want to work for the town of Quispamsis. So it's a very successful project. We thank Mayor and Council for your support as we implemented that, and we think that that will continue to be something that we will do moving forward in the future. And when we talk about our staff, and I apologize that you get my back end here facing you this morning, but I do appreciate seeing our staff. I don't like to separate unionized staff from non-unionized staff. From my point of view, we're all members of the same team. We all work together in various ways. And I think the fact that we have some folks here today, including some union leadership, it speaks to how everyone is engaged with this budget process. It's not simply the executive team that comes together and pulls these things out of midair. It's obviously with discussions through their staff and everyone saying we need this, we need that, and how can we move forward, and how can we put this forward to council. So when we talk about our team, and the World Series begins on Friday, I'd be remiss if I didn't use a sports analogy, but sometimes you need to find some new players. You have a few gaps or holes in your lineup, and you'll be hearing that a little bit later this morning about the two additional positions that are being sought in this budget. One is a parks attendant and the other is in environmental development services. And we come forward with those, and the directors will certainly make their pitch as well, another sports analogy, that these are important because of the growth that the mayor mentioned in her opening comments as well, that we are a big community. There's a lot to do. There's a lot happening, and sometimes you have to ensure that those human resources are in place for that as well. So just a quick summary here of the proposed changes within this budget. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the external sources, but it's sort of the internal sources that we are able to look at. That's general government, internal protective services, environmental health and development, transportation services, community services, debt servicing and capital, and reserves. As you see there on your screens and on your individual tablets, this budget is designed to see a tax rate decrease of 3.14 cents from $1.3163 to $1.2849. At the risk of being cheeky, but if you will indulge me, 314 is pi, so you could say that we've cut a slice out of last year's tax rate. So that would be a reduction of 2.39%. And as we're going to talk about a little bit later this morning is the internal versus the external items within the budget as well. A lot of those external items, they've been vetted through the Joint Finance Committee. So we do a great job of maintaining the line on the internal sources. It's a little more challenging at the external source line. One of the other things that has been discussed through this local governance reform process is the province's changing the core funding and the unconditional grant funding schemes. Unconditional grants has been discussed ad nauseum around this council table for many years because we don't get any. We are grouped with Rossay and Riverview has always received all of the funding that was earmarked for that particular grouping. That has gone down dramatically over the last number of years as well to the detriment of Riverview, but Rothsay and Quispamsis haven't received any. We do receive core funding from the province. It was $115,000 in 2022, and that will be reduced by 20% to approximately $92,000 in 2023. And the 20% reduction is significant because the province is moving forward to eliminating that core funding component in its current form over the next 5 years. So obviously 1/5 over each of the next 5 years. So that will do it for my initial comments this morning. You'll have to put up with me a little bit later again as well. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have now. If not, we will move on with our Director of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. And if we have any questions, please indicate by letting your button shine here. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for the presentation. My one question has to do with the core funding. If that the figure that we see this year, the 92,000, obviously is a drop from the 115. Is that core funding, is that guaranteed for so many years? Do we have an answer on that?
The answer from the province is that core funding is going to drop by 20% over the next 4 years after 2023, and then it will be gone.
So it's a gradual.
20% reduction for the next
20%, okay.
5 years overall, but 4 years after 2023.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. I think, Mr. Kennedy, you're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
And now we will invite our Director of Community Services, Dana Purton-Dixon. She has the proposed 2023 Community Services General and Capital Budgets. Welcome, Ms. Purton-Dixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, everyone. Worship, councillors, staff, thank you for the opportunity to present the Community Services Department 2023 budget. I'm going to start my presentation with some highlights of 2022. The Qplex was a practice facility for the Memorial Cup. In June, we hosted daily practices for teams as well as on and off ice sessions for the community. The same week, we hosted Jeux de l'Acadie, KVHS prom, a swim meet, and the Minda project. We hosted Canada Day this year for the first time since 2019. We added 2 new pickleball courts, which was mentioned previously, as well as installed acrylic resurfacing on the existing 2. The tennis courts were also refurbished this year, and we received a provincial government grant to help us with that project. We also finished our outdoor classroom and green space beside the pickleball courts and adjacent to the Qplex. We also received a provincial funding grant for that project as well. The Qplex also saw the installation of a reflective roof coating as well as LED lighting, which will help with our energy savings at that facility. We also installed stairs, wooden stairs for the slides at the Qplex pool for the 97.3, the wave pool. They were finished this fall and will be ready to go next season. We also installed an active transportation trail connection from Hammond River Road to the Model Farm Road via Millennium Cycle Bike Park. So this connection lands on Leeswood and allows safe passage over to Meehan's Cove Park. We're also continuing to work on our recreation master plan, our first one since 1987. And it started in the spring and will continue into December. We're also, as the acting CEO mentioned, continuing to see the impact of COVID. As he mentioned, we are still living with that and feeling the wrath of COVID is causing considerable impact to our operations. This is evident on our capital projects, our pricing, supply chain, as well as the recruitment and retaining of staff. We continue to adjust to the ever-changing environment. Significantly more effort is required to achieve the same goals. For example, with the stair project at the Qplex, we had to spec and tender it twice as we had to change course due to COVID, supply chain, and inflation. The 2023 Community Services General Operating Capital Budget Just like to show you these two quick pictures. The one on the left is at the Qplex. And as I mentioned, we had a project there which included the installation of LED lighting. That's the brighter light you'll see at the front of the photograph, and at the back is the old lighting and metal halide. And we've received lots of compliments from our walkers and our ice users on how much brighter that is in our facility now. And again, we hope to see some energy savings from that project as well. And the picture on the right is the Millennium Cycle Bike Park. And we had an event there on Sunday, which saw 100 cyclists come to the park for an opening. And we've had 5,000 people through the park in the last year, so that's less than a year since we opened it originally late last fall. The Community Services 2023 operating budget. So we've had a change in our revenue. We've increased by 8.4%, $96,000. And we've had an increase in expenses of 9.9% of $441,000. Just a couple pictures there of our trails, the community garden, and of course, back in action on the ice, which was really busy this summer from 7 in the morning till 11 at night every hour with our hockey camps and individual ice rentals. So as the acting CEO mentioned, it's back to normal, sort of. So the highlights, the variations, overall increases in the budget, you'll see throughout the facilities that we operate. There's increases in electricity, insurance, property tax, postage and office supplies. You'll see a couple of new items, as mentioned previously, the addition of a full-time parks attendant position. This is our first union position that we've added since 2014. And as you've been aware throughout various presentations, and our scope of work has expanded significantly over the last 8 years. So we are at a tipping point where we need the human resources to continue to offer the level of service that we provide for our residents, and the addition of obviously the new facilities and other areas of operation are critical for that position and to maintain our level of service that you and our residents expect. The Firefly Splash Pad, which was approved this year, we've got money in there for operations, which includes a contract with the Canada Games Aquatic Centre for the provision of staffing while we're open. And we also have expenses for the building for electricity, supplies, and what have you. We have a contract for the service provider that will come and every day for the mechanical system to add the chemicals that are required to treat the water every day. So you'll see that's an added operational expense to our budget. And we also have the same at Hand River Park upgrades. As you recall, we approved upgrades at the park last year, so that project is ongoing right now. It was due to be completed at the end of October. It's now mid-December, but that included the regrading of the driveway and parking lot, paving the parking lot. We also have a small building with washrooms and janitorial equipment room, if you will, at the back, a couple of picnic shelters, bike racks, as well as a very small natural play space. So there's money in that budget for the operations of that, which would include plowing the parking lot. So the 2023 facility maintenance and asset management plans include, at Parks and Facilities, we have $9,000 to replace ball field netting at the Walter Jewett. We have plowing the QR trail. That'll start from just behind the Col de Pionnier and run through to the New Street, Montana, which is across from the sewage lagoon. And I have the poop and scoop dog bag dispensers on here because it was an item, even though it's very small in scope, but it was referred to this process from the strategic plan. So we have 6 poop and scoop dog bag dispensers on order. 6 to 8 trail signs have been installed, and the signs are located at trailheads, crossings, with dispensers at all our parks, playgrounds, and again, trailheads. And they're spread out approximately every kilometer on our trail network. So I just wanted to close the loop on that because it has been brought up at council, then referred to the strategic plan, and then through to this budget process. So I wanted to let you know where we were with that item. And at the QMA, we have several one-time expense items The repointing of brick and mortar on the outside due to leaking water. We have security cameras, minor lobby refresh in there, fresh coat of paint, what have you. We also have the new requirements for the cooling towers, which has been required by the provincial government this year. So we have a contract price for that, as well as a disinfection and startup and shutdown. And at the Qplex, you'll see a number of asset management items in there and facility maintenance items, such as a rooftop unit, duct cleaning, time clocks for the 4 remaining dressing rooms, a dressing room hallway floor repairs, so not the whole floor, but just where you come in and out of the dressing room where there's been a lot of wear and tear. We're going to replace that. And then we have cube parts, and our cube system is the heart of the Qplex and the geothermal system. So we're ordering several pieces of equipment so that if something falters, we won't have to shut down. We'll have it on site so we can replace that equipment. We have some minor funding in there for concrete repairs in the pool deck. We have a robotic vacuum that one we had this year, the motor failed and we required a new one, and it didn't come until September. So we want to have that on hand in case that happens again. In our capital budget, you'll see a 55% decrease from last year. So our first item in our capital budget is active transportation and trail construction, $50,000. So this year we connected Hammond River Road to Means Cove Park via this new piece of trail. I went to the Millennium Cycle Bike Park. Those are the 2 pictures on the left. It just finished a week ago, it just opened, so it's not currently signed. Our signs are on order and are due to be in shortly, so we'll be able to sign that. Beautiful piece of trail, as I mentioned, from Hammond River Road through the Millennium Cycle Bike Park that connects to Leeswood and then to Model Farm. And our goal as an active transportation group and working with planning is to secure land for public purpose so we can connect Hammond River Park, Means Cove Park, and the Millennium Cycle Bike Park, because we really believe that's something special. It's a destination and we can provide safe passage. We're pretty excited about that opportunity. So the funding for this year will continue. On the blue section, you'll see the part on the lower right. I'll just show you. So this was built this year, this piece here, and this is the new proposed extension will connect to Calcratis. And this work aligns with our strategic plan and our commitment to community. Expand trails and active transportation options to improve connectivity was one of the objectives within that commitment to community. And we know that our trails are meaningful to our community. It's been top of mind for all our discussions. It's really the top item that's come out of our recreation master plan thus far, and it's been discussed at length with our transportation master plan. Trail usage from August of 21 to August of 2022 has been almost 150,000. And those are just on our main trails. We don't have trail counters on all our trails, but those are our main trails. And our 2 busiest trails would be the Trans-Canada Trail at 45,000 users, and the second most used trail, which is the QR Trail right behind it, at 44,000. So we know that our community is using our trails and appreciates the connectivity and the active transportation options, as well as the interest in recreating and being out in nature, which due to COVID has been more popular than it has ever been in the past, which is wonderful to see. So our next item is the replacement of mowers. We have 3 walk-behind mowers that need to be replaced. They were purchased in 2011. We mow over 60 different sites, and the mowers have reached the end of their useful life. They are no longer reliable, and they regularly break down. And this, of course, is in alignment with our asset management plan. The installation of the Firefly splash pad equipment, $130,000, that was approved earlier this year at a council. The equipment has arrived. It started arriving yesterday. More will be coming tomorrow. We saw what looked like a yellow submarine, but it was blue, but it's a 2,000-gallon holding tank that'll hold the water that's recycled. It's outside the Qplex right now. If you drive by and you see a big blue container, that's what that is. It's out in the pool area right now. So we'll be storing the equipment and it'll be installed next spring so we can start our season with the splash pad, which will be pretty exciting. If you go down by Firefly right now, you'll see the work is being done to the groundwork. The concrete forms have been poured, and we're hoping that we'll see walls and a roof in the next couple of weeks. The next item in our community services capital is a berm repair at Means Cove Park, $38,000. So as you can tell by the photographs, there's been ongoing erosion of the berm with each season. Damage has been caused by wave action. So we'll be installing a geogrid to prevent further erosion of the landscape. The sod has been repaired, and the mesh, as I mentioned, will go over top. And this also aligns with our strategic plan and the infrastructure management theme. So the next two items are engineering services for the town hall and the public works building. We need to hire a consultant to conduct analysis of our current conditions of these buildings. The town hall and the works department depot are in desperate need of upgrades. This funding is needed to begin the planning process. This will allow us to be prepared for the 2024 and 2025 budgets. The HVAC system, the electrical, the control system, building envelopes, they all require attention. The Public Works main building was built in 1984, that's 38 years ago, and it was built as a town hall, and 20 years ago it became the Public Works building. And if you go up there now, you'll see there's 4 different lunchrooms, there's mechanics working at one desk, multiple. There's like when I was up there last week, there's 4 computers at one desk. As I mentioned, the HVAC needs to be looked at. This was not constructed, although things have been added over the years, but it's not constructed for the use that it is now. So if you plug in a piece of equipment, it's going to trip a breaker. If it's a microwave or a coffee machine, they have to be very careful in what they use. The building is old, and the space needs to be considered, not only just the old town hall, the works depot, but the other. There's been 2 additions onto that with the garages, and you can see by the picture that I've showed you that there's deterioration, there's corrosion, there's rust, the concrete is crumbling. We really need to have a look at this space. We've run out of space. At the end of the project, we'll have tender-ready engineered drawings. We need to plan for the future with regard to staffing as the town continues to grow, as your worship mentioned at the start of this presentation. So next is the town hall. Similar, the town hall is 20 years old this year. It has had very little maintenance done to that in that time period. We did start a process in 2017 where was phase 1 at the time, where we addressed the foundation and did some drainage work. It was put on hold due to COVID. So this work will include a review of the building condition as well as the functionality. We will examine the areas requiring modifications to suit present and future staffing needs as well as organizational demands. And these projects both align with the strategic plan, with the infrastructure management and capacity building themes. We need to take care of our assets and plan to ensure our readiness for growth. And that's directly from our strategic plan. Millennium Cycle Bike Park washrooms, $120,000. The washroom and change area are important to create a safe and welcoming space for women and families. The building will house also, in addition to washrooms and a change space, a bike wash and repair station. There will be an overhang for picnic tables, and the building will be constructed in-house by our parks and facilities staff. Again, it's important to make this a place for everyone. This building was part of our discussions when we secured a sponsorship for the park, as we plan on marketing the growth of the park over the next several years and creating a destination, which was already discussed by some of our residents who were attending the event on Sunday. So again, we're working with planning to secure land for public purpose to connect to Model Farm Road and Hammond River Park. And this park is a key piece of that, what we're calling internally our trifecta, because we are really blessed to have these three parks and these three properties in close proximity to each other and in our community. I should also mention that this park is also used by walkers, many of whom are seniors. It's not just a bike park. And again, the usage to date is 5,000. And we took the counters, and that's not a complete year. And again, we're just really starting to promote the park with regard to, now we've installed the parking lot, which some of you saw on Sunday when you were there. And then the washrooms will be the next step. And we're excited about that. We had, one of our trail counters, our main entrance was down for a month while we were installing the paving for the parking lot. So we know that our numbers are actually higher than that, but we will, again, we've got trail counters there and we'll continue to monitor as we do all our other trails, our main trails. So we can come to you with this important data. So you know, we can't just say our trails are busy, we have the data to back it up. And this project is in alignment with our strategic plan and our commitment to community theme and obviously economic development. Under the economic development theme is collaborate to promote the town as a destination, and we certainly feel that these parks will do that. The Qplex Zamboni replacement, $200,000, as council recalls, this was approved in the summer. Due to supply chain issues, we were proactive with a few items in our capital budget, and this was one of them. It was tendered in the summer and has delivery date of March 2023. And the Zamboni has recently broken down again, and thankfully, when we purchased the Zamboni for the QMA, we kept that as a spare because we've used it several times. We are double our budget on repairs for this item, so we're thankful that that has been ordered and are anxious for that to arrive. Our community services capital, we have several arenas asset management items. We have hot water holding tanks that are at the end of their useful life. So it would be best to replace those under controlled conditions and in a controlled timeline instead of when it fails. We have rooftop unit number 4, building control system. This would improve our ability to troubleshoot issues as they arise. Presently, this is the only rooftop unit that is not connected to the building management system. We also have the removal of kitchen equipment at the Qplex, and we will be adding cages for storage, some of which will be rental space for local organizations, as rental space is at a premium, so there'll be a charge for that. We also have curbing at the Qplex in the Players Entrance parking lot. It's in disrepair and needs to be replaced. This would be the curbing that's around the lights and the gardens. We also have pool pipe that needs to be replaced. We had a leak in the piping a couple of years ago in the section from the building to the pool, so that needs to be replaced. And we also have a truck that's used in arenas for project management, as well as for purchasing supplies, moving equipment, garbage, traveling between facilities. The staff are currently using their personal vehicles, and the truck was decommissioned. That's because the truck that was purchased in 2012 is a 2010 truck, and it was decommissioned as the repairs were higher than the value of the truck when we went to look at the repairs this summer. So these items, again, are in alignment with your strategic plan, our strategic plan, which is the infrastructure theme. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Burton-Dixon. If we have any questions, please just hit your bell. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Burton-Dixon, for your presentation. I guess it's my fault. I should have said something when Mr. Kennedy was up there before we get into some of the discussions, but just want to make sure that everybody's set on what we're looking at. So a reduction of 3 cents still represents a 6.7% increase to somebody's tax bill, which is fine. In here too, you got to we're looking at increasing our debt servicing up to 2.1 million, which is higher. So and we're still gonna borrow 1.16 million. The average rate's been 3%, but prime's at 3.25 today, and by tomorrow, it's probably gonna be 3.74%. So it'll be a tough stretch to get that. We're still putting in reserves at 245K. We do have a capital reserve of about 2.7 million projected by the end of this year. We have an operating reserves of $950,000. So when you start looking at whether you want to add things or subtract things, just in the finance team or the meeting we had, the finance committee, we were split on what to do, whether it's borrowing, not borrowing, reserves, et cetera. So I guess when you ask questions, so everybody's coming through, may not mean it's dropping the tax rate. It may not mean, but you got to look at tax rate reserves, because also, and this is my comment, debt, we're going to increase our debt again. And next year, we're looking at borrowing 1.8 million again. So if we keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, our debt servicing cost is almost what we're paying for our roads now, 2.1 million next year, going up 2.5. So just in context, I just wanted people to think about that when you go through the questions. So that was in the context story. But and on the questions, I do have, I'll just go for one, then I'll let everybody else ask a question. If my other questions aren't answered, I'll go there. For the full-time position for the park attendant, is it a full-time? What will they do all year? And is this something that can't be done by a summer student? And what are their actual job functions?
7 full-time staff in our department, in the unionized staff. And in the summer, we bring in 12 students and 4 seasonals. So we lose 16 people. 12 of those are gone in August, and then we lose the other 4 in November. So as I alluded to, we've added a number of facilities. So every time you add a facility or a piece of trail, it has to be, obviously we have to maintain that asset. So it has to be inspected, it has to be repaired, it has to be replaced. And since 2014, and I'm just going off the top of my head, but we've added a Chelsea Bike Park, we've added Matthews Cove, we've added trail pieces, the QR Trail parking lot. We have expanded Means Cove Beach House. We will be expanding the Hammond River Park and operating that year-round. We will be looking at the splash pad, and even though we are contracting out some of the hiring the aquatic center's lifeguards for the first year, and we still are going to have staff that are going to be there that are going to have to check on, litter and visit that site every day. So it's really hard from a staff perspective when you're adding to the workload, but we're not adding to the human resource side. So there's lots of work that's done in the wintertime. We can still do trail work and tree trimming, and we have the outside rink, which is huge, our Christmas lights. When we add the plowing of the QR Trail, we're still, even though we're going to contract out, we're still going to have to go and inspect that, and record that and document that. So all our work that's being done is logged, and so that way we can avoid, litigation. We can demonstrate that we've taken. First of all, you want to take care of your assets, and second of all, you want to demonstrate that. So if there's an unfortunate need to defend your case, that you've taken care of that, we can do that. So there's lots of work, and again, we do all the snow removal. So we're going to add new facilities. So the utility building is going to open next year. So that'll be our area of responsibility. So our staff, if there's a light goes out in a building, we get the call for that. We take care of janitorial services, toilet paper, paper towel. We shovel all the sidewalks. It's really, there's all that work, and we keep adding buildings, we keep adding trail, we keep adding, and which we've done, which is grateful, and council has, allowed us to do that, and we've done that with your permission, and as you want to provide those services to our residents. But we are at a tipping point from a staff perspective where we need a person to help us. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. And I'll just add that Councillor Miller is our chairperson on our Finance Committee. Thank you for those responses, Director. Going next to Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for this great presentation. You guys continue to do great work, which we're very grateful for, and certainly this is one of the wonderful things about our town is the love people have for our wonderful trails and parks and so on and so forth. And as you say, there's so much else to it in community services. I just have two quick questions. One is around the engineering services component with Town Hall and Public Works Building. It's easy to see by virtue of the photos that you've included here that there is some need for repair and upgrade and replacement possibly. I just wanted to confirm that those two figures of 50,000 and 40,000, are those estimates for review of just sort of getting an assessment of what's required to move forward? That's what those are, right? Okay, as I thought. The other thing I just wanted to ask about is the Millennium Cycle Bike Park washrooms at 120,000, and the bike park's a very exciting new component, and it sounds like it's something that people are really excited about in the community, and even maybe from outside the community. I just wondered if there were any comparative estimates for that. Strikes me as a little high, and I say that with not a whole lot of insight into what is required. But as you lay it out, it certainly sounds it sounds as though it has required necessary function, but it also sounds as though there's some form that's being deployed there as it is meant to be kind of a bit of a branding item as well. And I just wonder if there have been any sort of models of things that come in and for a little less money, for a little less, function or form or what have you. So I'm just curious about that.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Back to you, Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. So fortunately, unfortunately, we have some recent examples of of our buildings. If you look at the splash pad in Ham River Park right now, that the first part of the contract for the splash pad is $500,000. That's basically your building that's happening right now, which is a little bit smaller in size, I believe. So there is obviously some groundwork to be done with that. We wouldn't be able to do this for $120,000 if it wasn't done in-house. So we know based on current pricing, COVID, supply chain issues, inflation, that number would be higher if it weren't done in-house. So in order to keep that number lower, and we have the skill sets, we're fortunate, we have the skill sets that we can do this in-house. So that's our plan in order to make this happen. Because again, we want to make this a welcoming space for women and for children from a washroom and a change perspective, so that they feel welcome in this environment. And I think it'll be critical to the success of that park.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And now we're going to Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your presentation. It's been really good so far. I do have a question. In the very beginning, you were talking about the Firefly Splash Park, how you've contracted out to the Aquatic Center, or the Canada Games Aquatic Center, for somebody to be there. Is there a reason for that? Because I've gone to the Rainbow Park splash pad in St. John and all the other splash pads, and there's nobody there. They're not paying anybody to sit there. Nobody is drowning. So I'm just kind of curious on what the reason is behind that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan.
That's a great question. The reason we've put that in there, and I believe we've discussed this at previous council meetings, but we haven't gotten into the details of what it would look like, but we've discussed with the residents in that area about their concerns with regard to parking in particular. And what we wanted to do was have that staffed when it's open. So if we're looking at 10 in the morning till 8 at night, we would like to have a staff person there. And so where the Aquatic Center manages our contract for lifeguarding services at the beaches and at the pool, we thought that this was a great fit. So we reached out to them and we got a quote for those services. And again, it's really, I'm hoping that it's just the first year, but we really want to make sure, we know this is going to be popular. We know it's going to be busy. So we want to use the lifeguards, and they may be junior lifeguards. They're not obviously going to, they're going to want highly certified lifeguards in popular areas. But we believe that there'll be some first aid, some minor first aids, some trip and falls, or somebody scrapes their knees or what have you, some education around it. With the splash pad and using it safely, but parking and just ensuring a safe environment in particular, we wanted, again, we just made that commitment to the residents in the area that we would be on top of this right from the start, and that includes parking and not, letting people block driveways, and encouraging to, how to get here and where to park and then to walk over.
So you mentioned parking, which is, I understand the rest of it, that makes sense. So this, you're getting a, like a lifeguard or somebody who's trained to be there. Is the Canada Games Aquatic Center okay with having one of their employees becoming like a parking attendant, or?
But they'll be enforcing the rules, and it'll be education and awareness. So if there becomes an enforcement issue, obviously call the police department. But yeah, they are very helpful in all aspects of whether it's the beach or the pool, whether it's picking up litter or raking the beach, or again, we'd call them PR sessions where it's, again, education awareness. Well, that doesn't matter if it's at the splash pad, the beach, or the pool, but again, it's just on education and awareness. So they will tell people that they can't park there if they see them parking somewhere they're not supposed to. But in the end, they're not enforcing that. That's a call to the police department if people don't listen.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Luck has a question.
Now we're going to go to Councillor Luck. Welcome, Councillor Luck.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, and thank you, Dana, for the great presentation. I'm always amazed. So blessed to live in such a beautiful, beautiful town, and we're so lucky to have such amazing infrastructure. So thank you to you and your staff for doing such a great job keeping it up. I'll tell you, I have a few questions. I'll list them off. There's only a few, but first, I did wonder if I noticed that you mentioned plowing, which I think is wonderful, especially when we're looking at kind of intergenerational and safety in the winter. Can you confirm that the plowing that's budgeted is actually plowing to ensure safe walking versus trail grooming, where people would have to use other forms? So that's my first question in terms of plowing the QR trail. If it's going to be plowed to the asphalt so people can walk or run on it. Also, I guess to build on
Councillor Luck, you're cutting in and out a little bit. So if I interrupt you, I apologize, but it's just to get the clarity on your question.
Okay. Was my first question clear enough, or should I repeat it?
Your first question was clear enough. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, please interrupt if I am cutting out, and I'll repeat myself. So my second question is to build on Councillor Bigger's around the infrastructure at the new bike park, which again, I'm thrilled about. And I think it's a beautiful addition to our town.
I'm sorry, you're gone again.
Oh, okay. I'm going to see if my headset works better.
Would you like me to answer the question? It's plowing. It's not grooming on the QR trail.
We'll have the Director of Community Services answer your first question while you're getting set up.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Worship. And the first answer to the question would be that it is plowing. It's not grooming.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can you hear me better now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So my second question is to build on Councillor Bigger's comments around the bike park. Again, looking at the clientele that would potentially use it, knowing the terrain. I know that you spoke about, changing tables. I'm not sure how many, it's not really a venue that you'd be capable of, bringing, unless you had like a really rugged stroller. It would be more, I think, kind of the age group might be a little bit older. So again, I just kind of question looking at the inflation, taxation, all the things that we're trying to kind of keep control of. And I guess I compare it to the res in St. John that's been functional and has far more usage because it has a playground, a dog park, a trail, a beach, you name it, it has it all there. And it's been functioning quite well for number of years using porta potties. So I'm just wondering if we've ever considered that, if we're, the nice thing is it's not another piece of asset that then we have to worry about maintaining. It's, we get someone to put them in for 6 months, in the summertime during the spring, summer. They maintain them, they clean them, You know, if there's an issue, it's their issue. And I'm just wondering if we've considered that for maybe a solution to have kind of, a larger one. I know myself, I mean, a huge group of us use the res quite often, and, we change in the porta potties because it's a larger porta potty. And it services that area quite fine. So I'm just wondering if that might be a solution for the expense and if that was looked into. And then I guess the other question I have, again, kudos. I mean, I love hearing that we're continuing to improve connections. And I think having Means Cove Beach and the park there and the bike park and Hammond River Park all connected through trail systems is wonderful. The one thing I'm wondering is, I guess I know Model Farm Road, and I know this isn't really a question for you, but in terms of more visionary and kind of working with the senior leadership team, um, you know, are we looking at, you'd mentioned safe transport, but I guess I'm thinking when you get to the end of the residential area coming from the bike park, you still have to cross Model Farm Road, which right now I wouldn't consider overly safe for someone because there aren't bike, there are not widened shoulders and things like that. So I'm just wondering if we're thinking about those kinds of things in the future if we want to build that area. And secondly, when it comes to the arterial, I know we've talked about this before, but that lovely arterial, and I know it's a provincial road, tends to divide our town into two. And, again, these attractions are very family focused, intergenerational, but a lot of children would be also using that. And I mean, anyone, I guess, in terms of trying to cross that arterial, we still don't have any safe access across that arterial if someone is coming via bike or rollerblade or by foot. It's really just geared towards cars, and I'm just wondering, bigger picture, are we looking at that in the future to make sure this all connects and we have safe access to get to these places? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. We'll go back to the Director of Community Services, Ms. Burton-Dixon.
So I guess I'd just like to clarify that it's a place for people to change, not change tables, that are going to be provided within this building for people that use the park. That being said, there was a toddler on a bike. There were several there on the weekend with their bikes and on their bikes with their parents, which was wonderful to see. But again, we would put a porta potty there in the short term. This as the res, which I also frequent, the difference with this is that we're going to have a bike repair station, a wash station. People were taking their water bottles and dumping them over their bikes in the parking lot on the weekend to get the mud off. We just are looking for it's used year round. It's going to be used by fat bikes. Again, I know people that have posted pictures that I've seen that hike it and snowshoe it all year round. So it's a destination, and I think it's important to provide those services when we make that a destination for all, again, for women and for families. So those would be change tables, not change tables, but changing station, washrooms, what have you. With regard to, there are several other questions in there. Model Farm Road, I can't speak to that with the road itself. I can, as a resident who lives out there, I actually walked from my house on the Neck Road down Hammond River, took the trail through to the bike park, and then came out on Model Farm and walked home. And it was a beautiful walk, and I'm excited for what's going to take place in the future as we work together again to make this a destination for our residents and for outside visitors. The arterial, I mean, that's something, and I'll ask the Director of Engineering to perhaps address, but we've talked as an active transportation committee, and we've talked at the transportation master plan level. We know it's an issue, and we agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Locke, and it divides the community, and we'd like to find a way under, over, what have you. I couldn't agree more with that comment. It's going to be an expensive item when the time comes. So I guess we're not at that point yet, but again, I would defer that to the Director of Engineering.
Thank you, Councillor Luck, and thank you, Director. We'll go now to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. It's great. A lot of information in here. So I'll start with just on the primary budget sheet. I'm wondering the increase in the food bank. There's an increase of 5%, or what does that entail?
Mayor, I don't know if you wanna, can somebody pull that up? I don't have those documents in front of me, I just have my
Oh, it
presentation.
shows that the food bank is going from 10. Yeah,
So is it $5,000 you're
It's-
asking about?
yes, the $5,000 increase
think
for the
there's- is
food
that-
bank.
Do you remember what that is, Barry? Because there's, again, there's increases in property taxes, electricity, all those items. So some of the buildings, if you're looking at each individual buildings, you're gonna see increases that aren't related to our work. They're related to the items I suggested earlier, the electricity, the property tax, insurance, all of those items have gone up. So there's increases in there that aren't necessarily ours, that have to do with our work. So
Okay.
I don't know, I don't have that.
Yeah,
can
no, I
answer
just
your
wanted to know, because it was, if we were doing something different there, or if there was a special project or something, but no, okay, that answers that question. My next question is about the berm at Means Cove. I see what, 38,000. Could you explain to me what a geogrid is and how that will prevent erosion from happening from every year? Because, I mean, it's pretty hard, depending on what the freshet is doing that year. Sometimes you might get more erosion than you would other years. And, you know, when that berm was put in place, obviously to protect the assets, like I
Yeah.
protect my assets. And so is this going to be an ongoing expense with this berm, or will this geogrid do the trick and fix it?
Well, I guess I can just, from my, Barry can add some more context around it, but I certainly don't anticipate this to be an annual installation. This is gonna last for a few years, and it's a plastic, I believe it's plastic, and it's like a mesh that goes over top of the grass that's gonna hold that sod in place during the wave action that occurs. But if there's more that you'd like to add, come on up.
Yeah, I think
Come here.
Microphone.
if you look back, originally it was armor stone, and a request by council was to actually landscape it. So topsoil and sod was added to it. So we essentially have armor stone, which is protecting the berm, and then on top of that, we've landscaped. That landscaping, the wave action continuously erodes that away. So we've repaired that landscaping, and then we're adding a mesh over top of the grass that the grass will grow up through that will mitigate that wave action and save us from repairing it every year. So we're hopeful that this is a one-time repair this season, and obviously possible touch-up repair as we go, but this should solve the problem.
Okay, so there is a wall underneath that landscaping.
Yeah, there's armor stone under, so it was just,
Underneath.
there's 2 feet of armor stone under the landscaping. So we're not at risk of losing the berm. This is simply to maintain the landscaping. Probably what
Okay.
should have been done when we added the landscaping to begin with.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And thank you for that, because I wondered, you know, if every year you're gonna get, like I said, depending on what the freshet's doing, will determine how much erosion you're gonna get. So, and to know that the wall is actually under there, I mean, we could just go with the wall and not have to worry about the landscaping if things got really bad. My other question is about the washrooms at the new bike park. So we're trying to connect, my understanding is we have washrooms at Hammond River. We will this year. And then in the middle, we have the new bike park, and then we have Means Cove. We currently have washrooms at Means Cove too. So I'm wondering, would it be possible to push out those washrooms another year and to allow that the washrooms at Means Cove can be used for a longer period of time? I had several residents come up to me in the month of October, late October, and say, look, we took our kids to Means Cove and the washrooms are locked up for the season, you can't get in. So I'm thinking, well, we already have that asset there. So I would like to see maybe the washrooms for the park be pushed out another year. I appreciate, and I really do, the fact that we can do them in-house is a huge saving. And I guess a question with those washrooms is, if there's gonna be a bike wash, where's the water coming from? Are we gonna drill a well? I'm not sure, or is it gonna be lugged in? Because you need well for washrooms too, so the well alone must be 10,000, 20,000 to drill a well. So I'm just, I would like to see us think about that. You know, where it's new, can we look at using our existing, ones to come, the Hammond River and the Means Cove Park, so that we can look at tightening up the budget a bit. And I know it's not a question for you. I know you've put it forward and said we would like to have the washrooms and you've prioritized it as a budget. I'm just putting that out there for the rest of council to think about, if that's something that is a real priority with us this year, or if we can look at maybe pushing that out a bit.
Comment to that, and we know people aren't going to go to those washrooms. Like, we have examples, whether it's Firefly. We didn't put a porta potty there for years because we thought we were close enough to the town hall washrooms, and we had complaints. So we have porta potties down there now because it's too far to walk. We had to add porta potties to the pickleball courts in the community gardens because it's too far away from the Qplex. So this is even farther. You know, when you look at the end of Sycamore in the woods, and you're gonna get in your car or drive your bike or walk, or you've got snowshoes on or what have you, you're not gonna make it to Means Cove Beach House. And certainly, again, the park is gonna be year round, and the washrooms, in order to open the washrooms, you're gonna have to open the big doors on the front of the building. And I wouldn't wanna do that much, too late into the fall, right? So just past experience is that people need washrooms and they need them close. And again, this is more than washrooms. This is a change area. We're trying to make this inviting and welcoming for families and for women in particular that are new to this sport, and we want them to feel welcome there. So we feel that this building is important to that. And again, we have a sponsorship agreement that is generating revenue for the town that was not there previously. We also received provincial funding for half of the park when we built it. Originally received was $88,000 construction project, and we received 44 from the provincial government. So we've done well with our funding for this project and for this destination, and we really feel that this is the next piece. And again, I understand comments about porta potties and using the res. I go there regularly as well, and I don't change in there. I just won't change in there, but I will use the washroom in there very, very carefully. But it's also something, it's just service level, and it's a commitment to the users of that park. Again, I just don't think people are going to go down the hill, and certainly not going to work during the winter. We can't keep those doors wide open, too far into the year, because you have to in order to get into the building to use those washrooms. Like the front doors or the gates are rolled up, it's wide open. And then you'd have to maintain and shovel and salt and sand a path to it. Whereas this building will be in a parking lot that's plowed.
Worship, just so that I understand, so if you can't use Means Cove in the winter, the washrooms, what are people doing at Means Cove in the winter? They're going down there to access the trails, and they're going down there to use the perhaps skate or something like that. Is there absolutely no washroom facilities at all in the winter months in Means Cove? Yeah, no, okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, your mic was turned off. So the question was, are there washroom facilities available during the winter months at Means Cove Beach? And the response to that was no. We'll move now to Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I always look forward to the vision of your department, and I think it's what what we promote to the overall general population and to our surrounding neighbors and visitors to our community. It's a full meal deal, I think, in what we offer to the community. And I think that the bike park is a new jewel in our community that is going to be inviting a whole new following of competitors at all age groups to come and use that trail. I think that the fact that the washrooms, the building could be constructed by our staff is a big plus. And I think that having followed my son-in-law to some bike episodes, I've seen what they go through as a group, and the washing station is an integral part of that whole exercise. But I think it's a great project, and the investments that we're making as a community is what makes us grow in a positive way. And I just like what I've heard, and I'm supportive of your vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. And Councillor Donovan, please.
Thank you. If this happens to go through the washrooms with the bike wash station, is it possible to, you know, make it so that the water that's coming through to wash the bikes is sort of like gray water, that it's like reused instead of constant like fresh water? Does that make sense? Or is that like impossible? Or
Does it make sense? I would think we'd have to run, I don't think that was included initially in the project, so we'd have to run the numbers to make sure it fits within our budget. But if we can do that and maintain our budget, we would certainly do that.
Thank you, Ms. Purton-Dixon, Director of Community Services. And I'd also like to thank the Manager of Parks and Facilities, Barry Brown, for coming and adding some very much needed information. One last follow-up question from Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing that wasn't discussed from everybody else, so I won't go back on the other things, is there's $25,000 for the Qplex for the park, for repairing the curb by the players. We just replaced that, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember what. I did go down and look at it and took pictures. I mean, to me, I don't know why we need to replace it. I mean, there's some scratches on it. There's a crack on one on the left-hand side. There's some little cracking where it's painted yellow, but I'm really confused because I'm pretty sure we replaced that not long ago, because I know we did a whole bunch in the front and a little bit, there was a discussion, we had to fix it because the salt was eating it away. And I will be challenging the $25,000 when we get to the discussion. So I went down and looked at it myself. It's wet, so you can see the crack's really nice, and I'm challenged to say why we need to replace it. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it's not the concrete that's painted yellow that's being replaced, it's the concrete around the islands where the gardens are and where the light fixtures are. They're all, I have pictures as well, which I didn't include, but I have those if anyone would like to look at those, but those are broken. And if we don't replace those, then your soil is going to leave what keeps your light fixtures and your gardens in place. So the yellow is fine, you're right. So what we've replaced down there is the asphalt. We didn't do the curbing that's around the lights. There's probably 6, 7 different areas that needs curbing around the gardens and the lights in the players' entrance parking lot. We're not touching any of the yellow. Well, that's the estimate that our manager has gotten for that work.
Okay, I'm just, again, I sell yogurt, I don't do this, but it seems an awful lot of money for that, and same as $38,000 for the meshing for the berm is kind of confusing to me too, but okay, thank you. I'll have to go look at it. I didn't see that.
Some technical difficulties here. I don't see any further questions for the Director of Community Services, Ms. Burton-Dixon. So what we will do is thank you for the presentation, and we are going to take a 6-minute health break, please. So we will be back in 6 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. At this point, I'd like to invite the Director of Engineering, Works, and Utilities, Gary Loge. He will speak to the proposed 2023 Engineering Works and Utility General and Capital Budgets. Welcome, Mr. Loge.
I'd like to thank you all for coming this morning. It is an important component of the work that you do to make sure that you give your staff direction, and it's important that we hear the message from you directly, and I think this is a format that really helps. I'd like to acknowledge my work superintendent, Jason McCarthy, at the back, and our utility superintendent, Steve Cross, behind me on the other side. As I said, they've got my back literally and figuratively today. Three other of the department managers are actually out working today. Trevor Murray is our building inspector. He's hard at work. Mark Morrison is downstairs working away at our capital project, finishing up, and Dwight Coburn, our municipal planning officer, is another person that I draw on a regular basis. So those are the support people that I rely on. Violet Brown and the administration in the office is one that sort of holds us all together, and it's the golden glove that sort of beats everybody around before they try to get through to me. So what I do, I can't do without them, and as good as I may look, they make me look even better. So the engineering and works and the utility budgets, when we look at where we've been over the last little while, we are looking at a project that in total accounts for about 20%, a fifth of the municipal budget that deals with. And this is a substantial one. These are the main areas of operations that you see in the day-to-day. When we look at community services and we look at the niceties that make this the community of choice, we like to think that from the operations side, the work that we do with our streets and utilities solidifies that choice that people are making, that they know they have a dependable operations for the town. The main focus of this particular presentation is going to be those areas that fall under my purview. There may be one or two items that I'll touch on that are outside of this particular budget, and I'll go into detail when we hit those slides. The summary that we have before you shows those divisions and the breakdowns. We're looking at about a 10.5% change over the previous year's budget. We will go through some of the significant changes that we're looking here. Generally, the last few years, this division has seen about anywhere in a range from a 3 to a 5% increase on an annual basis. This year, we're seeing a substantial difference in increase, and I think when we all, as individuals, go to the grocery store, fill up our gas tank, we see where that's coming from, and these are the direct costs that we experience every day. And as a big household, as we are, as the town, looking after our own house, we're subject to the same inflationary costs. And so the bulk of the costs that you're going to see being described today are really associated with that day-to-day aspect. The thing that we'd like to focus on is the fact that we have a consistent level of service. And that level of service, we want to make sure that it does not vary from year to year. We'll see that, we're looking at 186 kilometers of roadways in the town. That's a lot when we look at a community of our size, when we look at the growth rates that we have. In the past year, we saw 68 new residential units. Now that's to date. That was at the end of September. We are confident that we're going to track to similar levels that we saw last year, up in the 70s. We've got some growth of some new apartment buildings, some new multifamily units. And the key component that we look at from an operations perspective, just for this budget, is our street capital program and the maintenance of the streets that we have in the town. We're hanging tight about an 80 average pavement rating in the town. That is consistent with what we saw last year. What we're hoping to see is the ability to bring out those lower rated streets, those streets that are sitting below 60 APR, the pavement rating that we use. We're trying to get that to a manageable account, and in our asset management plan and our level of service targets, that is one of the focus areas that we'd be bringing to council's attention. So if we want to make sure that we have that consistent level of service as we move forward, When it comes to the works operations budgets, we want to make sure that the expectation is there. The fact that we are out there winter and summer alike, plowing, maintaining the streets. We're taking care of the stormwater. The last month we saw significant rain event that caused some localized flooding. You know, it was our crews, our works crews that were out there knee deep and sometimes deeper in the water, making sure that the culverts were clean and the traffic may not have been disturbed. They're out repairing any washouts, cleaning trees off, debris off the streets. So that's that level of service that the residents are used to seeing. The past year, I think council has seen an increase in the number of concerns brought to your attention with regards to pedestrian safety. That level of active transportation, the demand for controlled access to the trails, things like the rapid flash beacons. So this is reflected in this budget that we're taking that into heart as well. The biggest complaint that we have seen, and we've communicated that to the police department, is the traffic. Obviously, when it comes to managing the traffic in the municipality, we are going to play a key role in how we get the message across. Is it a case of education? Is it a case of enforcement? Are we going to have to introduce physical measures? And I think those components are the ones that sometimes the police may have a certain process that they feel is appropriate, but the residents or you as the representatives feel that we have to go to that next level. And we're looking to introduce a few items in this budget that will help us take that to the next level, so to speak. Benchmarking is important for our departments, and when we look at the way we look at how we perform, we want to make sure that we're doing things that are able to carry from year to year. You know, last year we saw 28 significant storm events. Those are storm events that really require an all-hands-on-deck approach. Obviously, we're going to be fighting snowstorms during the daytime hours. We run our operations from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. But there are going to be situations where they are called out after hours, or God love them, the Friday, Saturday storms that will come into play. And the last year was about 163 hours of overtime per person in the department. We looked at about 114 driveway culverts that were repaired or maintained throughout the town. That's generally where we see ourselves in that 100 range from year to year. One of the indicators that we look at is how many get carried over. We're carrying over about 21 this year, and that's the works crews will do an assessment, decide which ones are most critical, which ones are impacting access to properties. Then if there's something that's just an aesthetic, somebody can't get their vehicle across because it's scraping the bottom of their brand new Tesla or whatever it might be, we'll look at things like that as a lower priority. But there are going to be some that are carried over that are just because somebody doesn't like the way it looks. So we'll look at those as a lower priority. About almost 600-ton asphalts. The growth that we see in the asphalt, hand-placed asphalt, is an unfortunate indicator that the street network is sometimes coming a little more rough than we would like to see it. And we use that as an indicator of where we fall behind in our street capital program. What we try to get is a steady, somewhere around that 400 or 500 ton if we can. If you see in the previous years, we were up quite a bit, and then council committed to a little bit higher street capital program, and that's helped us in the long run, and we hope that will continue. Animal control is a division that falls under the engineering group, and we've seen that the level of service that we've introduced on the animal control component by introducing the NBSPCA seems to be working for us at this state of the game. So hopefully that'll carry forward. And finally, when we look at, as we talked a little bit about traffic, we try to get about 30 or 40 traffic counts in the subdivisions. Really, that's two approaches. We do some streets before we pave them, so we can have a before and after impact. We do some streets because it's a complaint driven, and we do some streets if they're directed to us by the police department, if they have some inquiries on their own. All this information goes back to them, and we try to help them in their enforcement process. The transportation budget is about, as we showed in the cover, about 6.2 million with a few significant line items, bringing that 10.5% increase over the 22. As I said, it's similar goals that we have from 22. And what we've done is we've taken the budget, the operating side, and we've adjusted a lot of the line item items to help us when we see trends. that are occurring. Krista and Nancy and Leah are pretty good at pointing out trends to our departments. What they do is they say, why did this happen? Are you sure this shouldn't have happened in a different month? We look at it and say, yeah, you're right. Can we spread it out? And it makes it a little easier when they see projected and predictable and accountable trends that they can manage for us. Really, in the operations side, the biggest line item is about a $61,000 increase in winter operations for outside contracts. What we found this particular year, it's the final year, an option year of the contract. The contractor advised us with the fuel escalation that they adjusted their unit prices. We're going to be renegotiating the contract after this winter season, but this was the biggest item that we saw that we would have to take into account in the 23 budget year. The other thing that we've seen is a lot of vehicle-related expenses, maintenance, fuel, insurance, and we'll cover that in the presentation as we go forward. So the overall fleet costs, that includes the engineering group. We're looking at about $113,770 that over top of the 22 levels. Now, when we look at that, you see insurance is about $20,000. The actual repairs are about $80,000. Fuel itself is about 10 grand. And what we're doing is it understates the importance of our fleet review that we've undertaken this year. We've got a fleet assessment project that we've started. We met with them last week. They were on site to look at our facilities, look at our processes. We've had interim reports where they're making some recommendations. We'll be presenting that to council in the next month or so with what they have. The next item that you'll see from the fleet, and we may circulate it to council, is an actual fleet survey that we have that's going out to all our department heads, all our fleet division employees, and all of the employees who actually operate a piece of equipment for the town of Quispamsis. So that survey will be coming out in the next week or so. The snow contract, as I touched on a little earlier, is a major item that we've dealt with in this particular year, and hopefully the renegotiation or retendering of that will bring it to a little bit more stable as we hit another 3 or 4 year contract. In the COMEX area, there's really no significant change amount, even though it is covered in this particular budget. It's one that is generally administered and negotiated with our CAO and council representatives. In the winter budget, the fuel is up. We're seeing equipment M&R slightly up by about 13,000 due to the aging nature of the fleet. When you look at snow plow equipment, it's a specialized type of equipment. It requires sometimes specialized equipment parts that either are sole sourced. So there's a lot of opportunities here that we have to make sure that we're getting a good level of service by having it done in-house. Our mechanics in-house, recognizing that a lot of places are sole sourcing, will make sure that we have an inventory, an appropriate level to keep the fleet up and running. The last thing we want to do is have a plow down in the middle of a storm. The one item that we have is a $19,000 proposal for next year. We have a loader on site at the works yard. It's there for specifically for loading salt and sand and gravel, moving equipment around the yard and plowing around the town, the old town hall, the works facility, and the depot. It was our second-hand unit that we've sort of kept and babied on as we move forward. What we found is that the unit itself now is the repairs on the safety cage, the roll cage, the structure is no longer feasible to maintain. It's actually more expensive to repair the roll structure than it is to rent a loader for 4 months. Then that loader becomes somebody else's problem, and we can just renew it from year to year. So this year we're proposing to rent a loader for a 4-month period to keep it in the yard. In the summertime, the equipment is a little bit more widespread, a little bit more varied in that you have all the small vehicles, the winter trucks. What we do is we'll drop the hydraulic systems, we'll drop the plows, riggings, things like that. So all of a sudden now you're dealing with half-tons, 1-tons crew cabs, dump trucks, gravel equipment, asphalt equipment, and so the maintenance repair budget is actually larger for the summer equipment than it is for the winter equipment. So what we see is that that approach, by doing it in-house, really helps us to manage it seasonally, and I think that's a credit to the folks we have down and working in our fleet division. Under the engineering group, we've also got environmental development. And we're seeing that is actually coming down a little bit. If you recall, we had some studies that we had completed last year. We've dropped the budget by about $20,000. And what we're doing now is we're actually implementing some of the studies that were undertaken last year. We're looking at the implementation of the subdivision specification and guidelines. And what that will do is we'll link it to our zoning bylaw, our building bylaw, and our subdivision bylaw. We'll take the standards that we've decided that we want to see as a community and introduce that into the actual bylaw so we can enforce those regulations. We are making sure that we look at subdivision-specific designs for stormwater management, asphalt standards, things like that. We can put a requirement on any development in the town, make sure that it stays a standard that we want to be able to live with. In doing this, we're looking at an increase in our IT equipment and the logistics and support and the licensing costs. Licensing costs is usually a function of two things. It's either how big is your community, and they'll charge you a percentage of the licensing fee for the use of a particular software based on the size of your community, or it's how many users do you have, how many licenses do you have open, how many ports do you have open. They'll charge you accordingly. So with our GIS mapping and field survey gear, we're finding that we have the need to have more people in the field, more responsive, more immediate response, the ability to manage that information. And what that does is it means that we have to pay a little bit more for our IT licenses that we have in use. We're shifting our strategic approach. The plan that you have provided and accepted as a strategic plan, now as staff, we have to find a way to implement that. We have to make sure that our operational plans match your vision for the community. And part of that process, our CAO Aaron talked about, the next steps are developing those business plans for the different departments. Our focus for this coming year on the engineering department is going to be how do we make sure that we can blend what you see for a vision from a vision statement, a mission statement, incorporate that into our municipal plan, incorporate it into the next phases of things like the master transportation plan, the AT plan that we have, and make sure that all the supporting legislation supports the vision that you have from a strategic perspective. Just on a quick aside from the AT perspective to Councillor Luck's question a little earlier to the Director of Community Services, Dana, the AT plan, and we'll touch on it in later on in my presentation, we will be looking at an overall master plan, an implementation plan, a phasing plan that will include that immediate area around the bike park and the Means Cove Road and the Means Cove Park. So that is one thing that we recognize is it has to be done. But just sort of, well, I remembered about it off the top because it wasn't in my notes here. Quispamsis is still the community of choice. It's a community that drives the most interests of not just the developers, but commercial entities, builders, immigrants to the community, new Canadians. We're finding that quite often, this is the first place that most people come to. Whether they stay here, whether they choose to develop here, generally what we're finding is it's a function of either can they do something more quickly, more cheaply, or they have an existing opportunity in another community. What we're recognizing, what we're hearing is that process-wise and development-wise, this community is very welcoming. There's not a lot of red tape. The explanations that our staff provides through whether it's Dwight in the Municipal Planning Office or Trevor in the Building Inspection Office is very clear. The standards are set and the expectations are set, and we'd like to make sure that that continues as we go forward. Because when we bring a proposal to you as council members, there are going to be guidelines and certain expectations that you all want to see, that the residents want to see. And it doesn't do us any good as staff to bring somebody in a proposal that's half prepared. I like to say we like to get these proposals while they exist on paper. It's much easier to fix a project on paper than it is to try to fix it after it's in the ground. And I think so far we've had positive response from any of the applicants, anybody interested in developing the town. They appreciate that approach. Sometimes it's frustrating in that you have to send somebody back a second time for information, but when you make that explanation and you make that clear that you're trying to save them time and money, I think it's appreciated in the long run. As an example, in the last little while, we've seen 92 new units approved in the town of Quispamsis. We've seen a rezoning of about 17 hectares of commercial development. All those things mean that we are creating opportunities for development in the town of Quispamsis. you know, in the queue, in the background that we have even waiting at this stage of the game, we've got 12 potential rezonings that have come through the municipal planning officer's review. This is something that these are options or opportunities that haven't come to council yet. So these are things that come to us as a staff level. This is everything from townhouses, mixed housing units, commercial development. Just a quick overview is about 670 new units in those 12 rezoning opportunities that we've got on the books that people are deciding if they want to proceed with or not. We've got 23 new active subdivisions on the development side. 23 active subdivisions is huge for this town because what it means is the developers have faith in the community. They have faith in the fact that we're growing, that we reflect the needs of their customers. They're in it to make a buck, and they can only make a buck if we make them look good. And in doing our job properly, people want to come here. And with those 23 subdivisions, you're looking at 614 lots. Now, what that means is 614 lots, 668 new dwelling units these are, if they get developed over the 3, 4, 5 years time frame, we have to service those. And this is a little different than the approach with community services in that when it comes to streets, municipal services, water, sewer, they are the main users. We can say, all right, we can choose not to put a sewer pump station in, or we can choose not to, but all of a sudden, if we do that, then we're not able to attract these new units. And I think there's a difference that we have to recognize that operationally, these are must-haves as opposed to would like to haves, nice to haves. And I think for us, it's balancing that approach. Yes, there's going to be opportunities where we say we can delay a pump station, or we can delay road construction, and it may not impact anything. But at some point, we have to make that decision is if it's an existing piece of infrastructure, do we do it now when it's the most cost effective? Do we wait a couple of years when it might be a little bit more expensive, or do we wait till the whole thing collapses and it's going to cost us an arm and a leg, and we'll be all over the press with some bad images in the municipality? We try to stay ahead of it, and we try to keep Your Worship and our CAO out of the press as much as we can. So when we look at the number of units being proposed over the next few years, one of the major proposals on the Environment Development Services budget is the fact that we're looking at a introduction of a full-time staff, a technical staff that will be used for that level of technical support. You know, we're looking at the initial stages, working with both the building inspection group and the environment development group to have this individual help them with that permitting process, the technical review process, some level of asset management, infrastructure inspections. We're looking to make sure that there's compliance with the code. That's our hammer that we have is the building code, the energy code. Those standards are what make this the community of choice. The fact that we have professional staff capable of interpreting, explaining, enforcing that particular code makes this a key area of growth. And we think that the level of growth that we're going to see is not going to diminish. What we're going to also experience over the next little while is going to be a change in standards. The energy code is being adopted by the province of New Brunswick. They're all continually reviewing the building code. And in the budget presentation, we'll go a little bit further into that. We'll see what impact that has had on our staff and our level of effort over the last few years. When we look at the engineering group itself, that's the one, I'd like to say it's the one technical group in the town that deals with all departments across the town, regardless of who they are. We will deal with my staff downstairs with Mark as the manager. We'll deal with roads, development, subdivisions, water, sewer, community services. They serve as that technical resource across the broad scope of the community. And it's important that this continues to be supported. What we're proposing on the engineering side really is two main budget items. We're looking at, as I touched a little earlier, the field capacity. We're looking at upgrading our GPS unit that we have in place now. We're looking to provide a higher level of technical support for capital programs. It's about a $12,000 change or investment that we're looking in that GPS unit. And we're looking at finalizing the subdivision specifications guidelines document. It's about $20,000 worth of work to do that. We're working with a couple of consultants to make sure that our bylaws and our plans follow those uses. We want to make sure that the standard that we have set is continued to be followed. When we talked a little bit earlier about, or I talked, I can say we, but I guess I'm talking here. When I looked at the, presented to you the building inspection trends, the last 10 years or so, we've seen a continual growth. This is to September 30th of 22. We saw, even as a little refresh from my initial preparation of the slides, we're up to 71 at the end of September. I had 68. So even in the span of 3 days when we prepared the documents, it changed. This is to September 30th. So we're going to see, 11 starts in 2 months, September, October, no, that's 3 months, October, November, December. Yeah, we're going to see more than 11 starts in those 3 months. So we're definitely going to meet the levels that we saw last year. We're going to see the number of permits, difference of 25 permits. That includes sheds, fences, whatever. So we're going to definitely see those in 3 months. So the trend that we have here is a little bit misleading in that we are going to be level with or exceed our previous year. So the graph is going to continually go on that up scale. What that means is, and it's a little small in the print, but I think the intent is here. When you're looking at the little blue bars, those are residential building permits. And what that means is you're seeing since about 2004 or 5, we changed the level of standard that we had for building inspections. The enforcement of the building code became a priority by the province and by the town. So what that meant is we are increasing the number of inspections that we're doing, both residentially and commercially. We're seeing a new building code that has been adopted. We're seeing the new energy code has increased the technical workload of our staff, which again brings us back to the fact that we are bringing a new technician downstairs to the technical crew that we're proposing. So we have a real no line budget item increase under the building inspection department, but what we're looking at is the full-time staff proposal that we would share at this stage. I would imagine that once we have the 6 months under our belt, we'll be able to better determine where that person is best utilized. We're proposing a shared person at this stage of the game, but I think at some point we're going to look at how those two departments are managed, how they are administered, because the technical aspects when it comes to development and building are becoming so overwhelming that as nice as our staff are downstairs to be a resource, we don't want to be a crutch in that. We don't want to be the excuse that somebody said, well, can you do this for me? Or I don't know how to do this. How do you do this? We've been willing to help and make suggestions, but at some stage of the game, we're going to be making sure that they have their own technical preparation in advance of coming to us. We still have to enforce it. We still have to review it. And I think this is one of the crux areas when it comes to the town for development. We're going to see a lot of multiple residential development over the next few years. It takes a higher level of inspection, a higher level of development review, and I think this the proposed full-time staff is going to be of benefit to continue that level of service, but also to protect the people that we have downstairs now. We all talk about stress and burnout and the rigors of the job, but I think what we're seeing is that the demand that the planning group and the building inspection group has seen the last few years has really pushed us to the limit. There's a lot of things, unfortunately, that are getting pushed off to the side of the desk that would be the nice to haves that we would want to undertake, whether it's reviews, studies, whatever it is, and it's just not getting done. And I think the time is now to bring the technical staff on board for those groups. As we go forward in the animal control, realistically, it's a slight increase from the contract. This is the final year of the 3-year contract where they have a 2.5% or CPI, whatever's less contract increase. The process, as I touched on a little bit earlier, seems stable. We are getting the same type of calls to the town, barking, dogs at large, bites. It's still happening. It's being administered and managed through the NBSBCA. Is it as robust, as customer focused as having an individual on call 24/7 housed out of the community. No, it's not. But what we're seeing is that the nature of the complaints are being, they're not as frivolous. So we're actually managing the ability, we've managed to the actual level of the impact that we want to see, as opposed to making sure that somebody is just calling to complain about a neighbor because they don't like the neighbor. And what we found, if you have that, if you overservice something, it'll be taken advantage of, and I believe we were a little overserviced when it came to animal control in previous years. Two items that are not specific in my budget. They're covered under general government services, but I wanted to make sure that they were brought to council's attention because they are included in the overall review. Our operating budget, two studies that have been a priority of council that we're going to undertake in this coming year, or we're proposing to undertake. First is we're looking at Ritchie Lake. Ritchie Lake is a focal point in our community, beyond the fact that it's the namesake of our town, but it's also the fact that it is a local drainage basin. It is a climate creator. It's a climate a buffer that we have in the town. It is a community services focal point. So we want to make sure that that particular asset is managed appropriately, is protected, and we want to do that by way of an application to the Environmental Trust Fund. We've done some initial research with the ETF group in Fredericton, and they tell us that this particular type of fund is very valid. It would fall within the parameters that they use to make a study and grants. While they're not guaranteeing us the funding, but they're saying it is a grant that they would consider, an application that they would consider. So we want to make that application to them in November, this next month. We want to engage some consultants. We're going to look at things like what is the current condition of Ritchie Lake? What's impacting the conditions of Ritchie Lake? What do we do to protect it against inflow and contaminants, fertilizers, sedimentation due to development, people who move away and dump their goldfish in it? You know, something as simple as that can have a significant impact on the habitats of any environment. So we want to make sure that we can look at that. We're proposing the study will prepare a report that would have some recommended actions that we can undertake, and whether that includes changes to our subdivision bylaws or changes to the development standards that we have. We want to make sure that we have a plan of attack for Ritchie Lake. So that's one of the studies that's being proposed. Secondly, we're looking at the development, and to Councillor Luck and to the Director of Community Services point earlier this morning, we're looking at an application that we're going to make to the Infrastructure Canada, their Active Transportation Fund. And again, we did a little bit of research with their administrators, and this is a fund that falls definitely within their descriptions, where we would propose an active transportation plan for the town. Now, this is taking the recommendations of our transportation master plan and the recommendations of our recreation master plan, taking the ad hoc committee that we had for AT, melding it all together and creating a community-specific proposal that would take what do we see as a standard, the accepted standard in the town. Yes, the transportation master plan says you should have a corridor that runs from Means Cove all the way down to Hammond River or along Millennium Drive. This will take us, say, what do we actually want to see? Should it be 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meters wide? Should it be on one side? Should it be a mixed use lane? Should it be a cycling only? Those types of things will be identified in this plan. How is it constructed? Beyond that, we'll say, okay, these are the types of things that you want to do. This is the timeline you should have. Is it a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan? Depending on what is accepted. Now it's a case of over 15 years, this is going to cost you $2 million a year. Council then has to decide, is this an investment in the community that you want to make? It will go beyond just making that initial capital investment. The Director of Community Services Group is going to have to plow it if you choose that, if that's the standard that you want to have. They're going to have to sign it. You know, so those types of things will have to be taken into account. Do we take a street and build a walking lane so that it's integral to the asphalt so that we can plow it with a wing plow of a snow plow? Those types of discussions that we'll have when we look at that implementation of this document. So that's a proposal. We're looking at a $50,000 line item in the budget. These are generally cost shared, so we're hoping to see anywhere from a $60,000 to $100,000 study in the end. Obviously, if we don't use all the $50,000, this is money that will go towards my retirement fund. Oh, did I say that loud? No, okay, sorry. When we look at the transportation capital, this is the big ticket item. for the division. We're looking at about $1.2 million in equipment. We're looking at about $2.62 million in street and other levels of operating capital. In doing this, what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that we're spreading the wealth, so to speak. We look at the decisions on why do we plow certain streets. We look at how we spread the asphalt around, literally and figuratively. And this is a reflection of our asset management plan and our pavement rating system that we've introduced, the council has asked us to utilize. It does a few things. Is it takes some of the guesswork out of which streets we want to do in the upcoming years. It takes a little bit of the onus off of council from a priority perspective. Obviously, council still will establish priorities if there's a specific street or project that becomes to your attention that you want us to address. And when we look at the trends over the last few years, we're looking at a slight increase in both the equipment side and the street capital side. So that's just the overview, and we'll go into a little bit of breakdown as we go through the presentation a little further here. One of the important trends that we look at and we bring to council's attention is how do we come at some of these numbers. And when we look at the trends, and I've got to change this graphic next year, I think, but it really gives us a feel for the level of streets that we're doing, the number of streets, distances, the actual cost of the asphalt in that particular year. And you can see from year to year it varies, and it depends on what's the economic driver or the inflationary driver in that particular year. Last year, I believe it was a rebound off of COVID, and people were trying to make up for some lost time, and we hit a high of $133 a ton of asphalt. What that has caused us to do is we normally budget our estimates in about $100 a ton, and we are pretty good at that when it comes to creating some ballpark numbers for budget purposes. We've had to adjust our budget estimates to $120 a ton for asphalt. While there's no guarantee it will be $120 a ton, and it may come in at $133 a ton, we had to do our best rationalization, our investigation with some of the suppliers. What do they see us being next year? Where do we envision the demand being? Sometimes you'll get the contractors will focus on another sub item like a gravel or something, and they may adjust their asphalt prices accordingly. But we feel that at least at $120 a ton, we're not going to be too far off when it comes time for tender. What we're hoping is that the size of our projects that's being proposed, the proximity of some of the streets will enable us to get a reasonably good price. And if it comes in under the 120, then we'll be very happy. So the parameters that we use at when we're looking at is as we touched on a little earlier. We're trying to ensure that all of the 60 pit rated streets are done in that 10-year time frame. We're trying to make sure that we assess the pavement surfaces, what's the sub base like, what are the traffic volumes like, what are the things that we have to address. We propose a mix of collector streets and local streets. Generally, that collector street's about a $600,000, $800,000 to do it. We've had inquiries as to could we do all of a street, and I'll go back last 2 years ago when we did Hammond River Road. We finished it completely. We took advantage of the asphalt prices. If I remember, was on the graphic, it was like $72 a ton. So those are very valid questions, and what we're seeing is that we have to be able to balance the demand of the rest of the community. What are we sacrificing? We could very easily say, yes, we're going to go in and we're going to do all of Millennium Drive. We're going to put the street in place. The walking lanes are going to be done all in 1 year. It'll be a $3-4 million project. But then we won't have any other streets being done. You've got some streets that are 60 or worse in the list now. Some of the subdivisions that are being 35, 40 years old that haven't been paved since they were constructed. And now where do they fall in this? And that's the balance that we have to find. And ultimately, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, you give me $4 million to pave streets and you choose to borrow it, I'll pave every single street in the town. But again, that's me being selfish, and realistically, we want to look at that fiscal responsibility that is associated with that. And we recognize that fact, and that's why we're proposing a mix of collector and local streets in our capital program. The special priorities that are established by council will also be a driver. Sometimes you, as the grassroots politicians, will get a request that all of a sudden clicks, And we recognize that, yes, that's something that has to be done. That's where we have to make sure that we leave space in the budget for things like that. So in our street capital program, we're looking at a few local streets. When we look at the ratings, their ratings anywhere from 54 to 68. And what happens is sometimes you'll get a street that's poorly rated, but we're doing the street next to it, which it might be a little higher rated. And what that does is it gets us out of that area altogether. It buys us a little bit of extended time. So that's one of the rationales why you may see, well, that street's bad, but the street next to it is not as bad. Why are you doing it? Two things is it gets, as I said, is it addresses that subdivision as a whole. Also provides us with some economies of scale. The contractor does not have to mobilize or remob from time to time to time. So it reduces his costs. He can send that savings on to us. Cambridge, Captain, Olympic, Ambassador is that one area and I remember my first week on the job, they were paving Ambassador Drive, and I was going around with Ralph Breen, who was the work superintendent at the time, and they asked me if I was Ralph's assistant, and because I was 28 years old, and Ralph looks at me and he looks at them and goes, no, he's my boss, and they all sort of half chuckle and off they went. But it was now I'm sitting here 35 years later as an employee for the town, and Ambassador Drive was one of the first streets when I came to work for the town. Now it's on the 5-year street capital list. It's a 35 years is a long time to put a street down. It's a long time to do anything, leave it sitting around for 35 years. Not that I've been sitting around for 35 years, but streets, we'd like to get those within that 15, 20-year max cycle. And that's a goal of our asset management plan. But this just hit home for me of the cycle that we find ourselves in. We're a little bit behind and we have to get caught up. Sherwood Park, Archer, those are streets in the old Gondola Point area. Obviously, they're the same era. Lindsay was another one. Market Street, it was one of the older streets, and one that's actually older than, I would say older than me. It's longer than I've been here. The street has been here. And that's that connection from down to the water tower down to Millennium Drive. What we're proposing is to address this at the same time that we look at Millennium Drive. So in this year's capital program, we're proposing to take Millennium Drive from the intersection with the arterial, up past the McEsso, up through the Parkland entrance, past the car wash, to that first intersection up to Market Street, do that whole area. But we're also going to be proposing to introduce some walking lanes, whether it's curbed or not, crosswalks for the folks at the Parkland. And I think Deputy Mayor, we were talking about it the other day, it's the students too. During the winter season, it's just like it's like the deer on the street, but it's worse. The students are all over the place and they're going 5, 6 across, and it doesn't matter if there's a light, there's no light, they're going across. And I think there's safety in numbers, but all you got to do is take out one and it doesn't look that good. So I think we'd like to be able to introduce some level of pedestrian control in that area between the Parkland entrance, exit, the subway, and the McEsso on the other side. And I think that's going to be one of the focuses of this area, and that's why we're focusing on a smaller area from that Millennium, in that Millennium area from the arterial to Market Street, so we can have that quick hit, so to speak. Then in subsequent years, we'll look at how do we continue that on along Millennium to the Rossay boundary. The Old Neck Road is one that we carried over to this year. Obviously, this is a chip seal street that is definitely older than I am, and we have to really be able to address it in the next year. There's a level of service there that the residents are expecting that they're not receiving. Even something as simple as having a garbage truck or a snowplow be able to either continue by without turning in your driveway, and you can't pave your driveway because if you do, the big heavy gear that is there, garbage, snowplow, police, fire, turn in your driveway, and all of a sudden it ruins any asphalt you may put down. So there's an expectation there that we've committed to the residents. It's just now it's a timing issue, and hopefully we can undertake this in the 23 capital program. The major street capital that we're investing in is a continuation of Means Cove Road and the evolution of our trail network in that particular area of the town. It is a collector street. It is going to be a main thoroughfare. And what we're proposing in this particular year is to try to get us as close to cobblestone as we can with the extension of the bike lane and the walking lane that we have there. At some point on this road, we will have to transition from 2 sides to 1 side, mainly because the traffic levels will decrease, the opportunity for connections decrease. We're going to cobblestone because that's the one that could take us directly over the hill to the Chamberlain Road. The other factor is the actual geometrics. The geometry of the area means that with the Means Cove Road, the road narrows, there's steep banks, there's curves, and we will not be able to physically get the same width of street right-of-way use as we have in the previous phases. So this is a major item. We've pulled $730,000 as a proposal. It will be designed in-house to try to keep some of those costs down. But if we use this past year as any indication, we had proposed over $500,000 for the Means Cove Road to go to a full year, and the costs came in as we saw at $133 a ton. We had to pull it back down to Country View. So we're hoping to go beyond that. The other one that I touched on a little bit about is one of these unique special projects that come before council. The growth of the Meadowlark subdivision has really put a focus on the walkability of that immediate area. That is from the Meadowlark subdivision either to the École Pionnier or over to Quispam Middle School, Chris Saunders School. We've had an increasing number of demands to staff and I believe to members of council as well, looking for some improvements to the trail or sidewalk network that are there. At this stage, we're proposing $180,000 in the upcoming program to either look at twinning some of the sidewalk or extending the sidewalk, or looking at creating some access so that people don't end up crossing the street at random intervals around at a corner. We'd like to be able to control that, make it as safe as we can. So that is being proposed. Ultimately, we'd like to link it all the way back to the QR trail, but even if that means just creating a widened asphalt surface and a smooth surface, we would do that. We had requests from the École Pionnier to extend the sidewalks across the front of the school to accommodate their daycare. So those types of requests are coming in after we did work on the Quispamsis Road. But as I said, this is one of these unique things that pops up and we have to be able to address it. If this is a priority item for council, we've identified that as a priority item for ourselves as well. Our capital equipment, if you recall, and the Director of Community Services talked about it a little earlier about the fleet that was approved previously. We've actually have 2 snowplow replacements on the books right now that's being proposed for this year's capital program. It's about $740,000. And I think I gave you an update. They have been tendered. Tenders have been awarded, and we're not expecting a delivery of these units until August of 23. So it just goes to show if we had waited 4 more months till January, we would not be seeing these plow units until 2024. And these are going to be integral into the snow fighting capacity of the town as we move forward. So it's important that and I appreciate the fact that council saw the wisdom in putting this out to tender early. We've got 3 fleet vehicles that are extended beyond their useful life. They're 2008, 2009 era. The 2 half-tons and a crew cab that we've proposed. We're looking at our asphalt capacity, and we've got a mini loader that has enough hydraulic capacity to actually run a small spreader. What that does is it gives us the ability to look at isolated repairs, narrow trails, driveway aprons, things that we don't have to bring in a full 8, 10, 12-foot spreader. We can do with this 3-4 foot wide spreader with the unit with our in-house staff. We want to maximize the utility of this mini loader. We want to bring in a broom attachment for street sweeping, obviously. We could run it in pretty much all seasons. With the street sweepers, we've used it for gravel, we've used it for leaves. We've actually even swept snow in light snowstorms. So we think the functionality that's being proposed for this particular loader unit is of good value. We're proposing a tilting trailer for our asphalt crews. It's a safety issue. We've had some incidences where the tilt unit has not functioned properly. Fortunately, unfortunately, we've had one short-term injury associated with it, but we've managed to miss any long-term injury or work compensation type of injuries associated with it. And it is critical to the performance that we have in the asphalt crews that we replace this particular unit. We are also looking at, if council will remember, last year we purchased specialized equipment for the traffic intersection down here at the Pettingill Road. We want to actually introduce the installation of that as part of it, and it's going to be a two-pronged approach. We're actually going to be milling out, so this is sort of a slash between asphalt and equipment. We'll be milling out about 20 or 30 feet in either direction, all 4 legs of the Pettingill, eliminating the in-ground sensors that are there, paving it all brand new, relining it. We've got some alignment issues with some of the lanes as we come off the Pettingill Road. We want to adjust, but we'll also be installing these overhead sensors, traffic controls for that intersection. Our storm sewer is basically, we have a set amount that we use every year, and we take local improvement projects as well as specialized drainage projects that we try to address. The big one, and council will probably recognize, is the units that we've got there for traffic control. Last year, our budget for this was $15,000. We're 5 timesing, quintupling, 5 timesing our budget for the $75,000. That's rapid flash beacons, pedestrian controls, radar signs, traffic calming in the subdivisions. The demands are there, and the expectation is there, and some of these temporary traffic measures, we require to have them in and out on a regular basis. Some of it is for new locations, some of it is to replace damaged or stolen equipment, and yes, people steal traffic calming signals. I don't know why, but they do. We want to make sure that is properly reflected in this year's budget. So from an engineering and works question, that's pretty much the presentation for your worship. If there are any questions, I do have afterwards, obviously, the utility side, but this is one spot that we can stop and take a drink and a breath.
Thank you, Mr. Logier, Director of Engineering Works and Utilities. And I will open the floor now for questions. Certainly a lot of work has gone into these budget preparations. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Logier, for your department's presentation here this morning. It is a bit overwhelming to review and digest the extent of our growth, in the community itself. I'm very pleased to see an increase in the kilometrage of actual roads that are being addressed in 2023. 7.1 kilometers is the highest that we've had ever in the last 10 years. And hopefully the 120 won't be too far off the actual mark. I think the asphalt prices have got to come down sometime. They can't always keep increasing. But I'm pleased with that. One of the disappointments, and maybe a disappointment is maybe the wrong word, realization is that we haven't addressed the sidewalk issue around the elementary schools, Lakefield Elementary and the others. I think that concern is still there. It's ongoing. It's an annual concern, and I was just wondering if that's going to be addressed at some time in the future. And other than that, I support what you've presented. I think you need the equipment to do the job, and when you keep expanding, you're expanding the demand and the need. So I support all that, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Would you like to reply?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Definitely, yes. To your point about the school sidewalks, what I envision happening is with the active transportation phasing and implementation study that we will do, that will be a key component because it's all linked together. How do we do that? So where we have not been able to look at isolated areas, say around a school, what I hope to see with an AT plan is we'll look at links, routes, and proposed infrastructure, and then a timeline for that. So now we can say, oh yes, the Quispamsis Elementary School or the middle school or Lakefield is part of the Queensbury phase of active transportation. And as part of that, it's going to require the town to commit $2.1 million, which will be a sidewalk from X to Y and a widened road from Y to Z and connected to to the walking trail at this location. So I think that is, it's going to be a integral part of any AT plan is where do we take the sidewalk network from here? How do we phase it, and then what will that cost?
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Thank you for the question, Councillor Olson. Next, we have Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Director of Engineering and your staff for all your hard work on this file. So it's what makes everybody move around here. Moving the people. So I have a couple of questions, if you would allow me, Your Worship. One is about the Quispamsis sidewalk diggle to the Q Trail. Currently, we put the Pettingale Road doesn't have a sidewalk all the way up, but on the right-hand side going from the river, if you're going up the Pettingale Road on your right-hand side, we do have a paved part with rumble strip to allow pedestrians to walk. And as I understand it, the proposal is for the sidewalk to go on the other side. And I've driven by it several times to get a good look at it, and it's quite steep. There's quite a drop-off into Nightingale. So I'm wondering, are we going to rip up the rumble strip? And it looks adequate to me. So that was one question I had. And the continuation of the sidewalk down to the QR trail, that's a very narrow portion of the road there, and it goes downhill. And my experience with the Q Trail is people park at the French school and then they'll walk down there. So I don't see how a sidewalk fits sort of in that one little piece. And I know you alluded to perhaps it's something else, and I would rather see something else than a sidewalk go in there. So that's the first question is on Diggle. My other one is about Millennium, because it is a significant amount of money. It's $350,000, and I'm just wondering why that wouldn't wait till we get the results of the study that you spoke to earlier, so that we see where the active transportation all fits in together. And my last one is about the review of bylaws for your department, and if we have any costs associated with that, and the amount of labor-intensive work that the staff will have to do to look at reviewing bylaws for increased works, building codes, thinking outside of the box. What can we do that would be different for attracting affordable housing, things like that. So those are three areas that I'm a little concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Mr. Loge.
The Diggle sidewalk area, as we're looking at it as a concept initially. You're correct in that it may not be all sidewalk, traditional curb and gutter, concrete sidewalk. Once we get past the school, going down to the QR trail, really it's going to be a case of addressing what is needed in that particular area. Is it going to be something as simple as just milling out a 6 foot wide of asphalt and just replacing it with a smoother asphalt surface? If you go through that area now, and obviously you've walked down through there, it's the old original Quispamsis Road. It's got logs coming up through it. It's got potholes. It's got sinkholes, the whole 9 yards. So if we're going to promote some safety and some easy access, some easily maintained areas, then that's going to what we'll be looking at for that particular link. So I don't necessarily envision that as a sidewalk all the way down through there. Going onto the other side, going towards onto Diggle, the rumble strips and the walking lane that exists there now. What we were trying to address is getting people across from Meadowlark to the other side in a controlled locations. Those would be either at Diggle Drive directly, and then down at the intersection of the Quispamsis Road and the Pettingale Road. What will that require? Will it be something as simple as taking a sidewalk from the end of Meadowlark, taking it down to the mailboxes at the church area, and then crossing the street there? If we can do that and not lose the rumble strips on the opposite side, I think that will be fine. It's just gonna be a question of how do we move the people in that particular area. But like I said, the main thing is we have to recognize that it's not just Meadowlark. The development of that subdivision is gonna take us all the way up to Diggle. So is that, what we will be reviewing is that sufficient or acceptable to have that walking lane throughout there? It is part of our active transportation network to decide what that streetscape would look like. We have to recognize that the cost to maintain a concrete sidewalk would be added to that. So I would envision that most of the work would be on the church side, the Meadowlark side, very little on the uphill side, other than controlling pedestrian traffic to get it at centralized locations. What that may mean is that it could come under budget. Then it looks good for our department, and then we can make sure that savings are passed on or preserved, or I'm sure there will be some streets that will be over budget. But at this stage of the game, it is a vision for that particular network that we're looking at. To your point about Millennium Drive, it is a high-profile, high-used area that we've had multiple inquiries from Parkland about access to the safety of the residents. We don't envision that just by taking us from, because that particular area is relatively congested and developed, we don't envision the fact that if we put any sort of a trail system in there or sidewalks, whatever it might be, that it will jeopardize or prejudice future development or evolution of the trail network for the rest of Millennium Drive. What I envision happening is at Market Street, that's going to be that takeoff point. So everything's going to be centrally congested. Okay, from there, where do we go? Obviously, we're going to be going up Market Street through the blocked off area on Autumn Avenue back to the Hampton Road, along Millennium Drive. Now we go the other way towards the police department into the town of Rothsay. The question then becomes, how do we link back into Cedar Ridge Boulevard and those subdivisions up there? That is the phase that, regardless of what we do at the intersection of Millennium and the arterial around the McEsso, is not going to be impacted. It won't impact what we choose to do in the future phases. So we've strategically chosen a concentrated area because we can do whatever we want there essentially, and not worry about it's being done in vain or being wasted, because but we have a demand there that really has to be addressed. So that's why we're proposing that small of an area at this stage of the game. And with respect to the bylaws, revisions, subdivision bylaws, there is $20,000 in the municipal plan budget line that addresses a level of effort for incorporation of any new subdivision standards that we choose and development, and how do we incorporate that into the bylaws or redraft bylaws. So some of it will be done in-house, some of it will be a continuation of the consultants that have developed our plans. They will help us do that. So we respect the fact that the demand on our staff time is there, and so there will be some level of effort from consultants to help us on the way.
With the new staff up?
The new staff, where this person would be junior, would help in that the senior staff, the municipal planning officer or the building inspector, would then be able to look at the bigger picture administrative issues. You'd rather have your most senior persons, more experienced people addressing that, if rather than inspecting a fence or a pool or something. So it's just a division of duties. So indirectly, they would help by freeing up time for the supervisors.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Squire. Thank you, Mr. Loge. Going now to Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Director, for a great report. As Councillor Olson says, it's a little bit overwhelming all in one shot, but great work, and thank you so much for all the hard work by you and the department. I guess I wanted to, this is maybe a bit of a 30,000-foot sort of question related to sidewalks. There's been some questions raised about it, whether they should be, added in certain places or the value of them here and hither and yon. And as we were just discussing, it just came up a minute ago about the subdivision specifications and guidelines document. Our acting CAO mentioned about how this is not really, in form or function, sort of a sleepy little bedroom town currently. And I know there's great effort being made to increase walkability, not just in our great trail system, but also throughout the town, street to street. And obviously with the work of the AT Ad Hoc Committee, and as you say, sort of dovetailing that in with the general sort of capital investments being made with streets and expansion, there's a lot of work being done there to create walking lanes and so on, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. But I'm wondering about the development going, maybe perhaps just on a go-forward basis around subdivisions. And I think that sidewalks, as a general rule, in my estimation, are not just to me. You mentioned about the importance of, need to haves versus nice to have. I see them as a fairly fundamental part of, in my estimation, of where we are as a town currently. I know that, putting aside the cost for a moment, just speaking about them on a principled basis, I hearken back to when the police chief and some representatives from the traffic department were here from the force talking about the perception of speeding that occurs in people's minds. And of course, you have been, had to answer to a lot of questions about traffic studies and, analysis and so on. And there is sort of a sense of perception of speeding that sometimes doesn't get borne out in the data. In fact, that seems to happen a lot from what I've observed. And so I think about that and I wonder, well, if it's dusk and you're walking down a subdivision road that has no sidewalk and someone is coming along at, 54 kilometers an hour instead of the 50 that's posted or what have you, does that add to just a sense of inherent danger that you have, or does that create this perception of people speeding along? And I wonder, if you were on a curbed sidewalk, would you be maybe as inclined to see it that way? I don't know the answer to that categorically, but I'm just trying to create a bit of a through line in terms of what maybe the perception is around how people are motoring around town and how it would be if we had more sidewalks. And so, wanting to just look forward, we have this subdivision specifications and guidelines document. And I guess I'm just curious about your perspective on making it a mandatory aspect of new subdivision development that sidewalks would be a measure of a width of sidewalk, the width of a new house, lot would be part of a developer's agreement. And I'm just wondering I don't imagine that that's a cost that we want to take on entirely ourselves. I'm not suggesting that. I understand that the dollars and cents of that are, fairly, it's pretty high, but compared to what we do currently. So notwithstanding the great work that's being done to create walking lanes and sidewalks in specific spots, I'm curious about, generally speaking, if we have achieved, and I guess I raised this partly just for the council's consideration as we go forward, I really just wonder if we've come to a point in the evolution of our town where we need to see this as a required part of future development going forward. But I am interested in your thoughts on that, Director, your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger, Director of Engineering and Works and Utilities.
What you're proposing is introducing subdivisions in all the new subdivisions, introducing sidewalks is multi-layered, primarily because as young as we feel we are as a community, we're relatively well developed and our density is there. So all of a sudden now you're looking at new subdivisions that are on the fringes of existing subdivisions. So you're looking at extensions of existing subdivisions. So how do you get to those subdivisions is the most basic problem that we always go back to. You touched on the financial component is when you look at concrete curb and gutter and sidewalk, and even if you just say just concrete sidewalk, you're talking about on a standard house, which is 30 meter frontage, you're talking in the range of, $200 a meter. You're talking, another $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 of costs that the developers would have to incur. So now all of a sudden, does the community become desirable? Some people may say, well, it's desirable because it has the sidewalk. But when we look at the communities that as we exist now, the level of traffic that you see in some of these, the presence of a sidewalk does not take away from, it doesn't detract the attractiveness of our community. What we're doing in our transportation master plan is we're developing a street hierarchy that would say, okay, if you are this point in the subdivision, you're the collector, you have this level of traffic, it should have a sidewalk or it should have a trail so that we can have a planned approach to when is a sidewalk necessary. So then we can deal with it in the appropriate steps. when it comes to asset management, when it comes to sidewalks, you're talking about, right now, we've got sidewalk plow units in the wintertime that are, $200,000 units. Now we would have to add 1 or 2 units, 1 or 2 staff, those types of things, just to maintain what you have, unless you go to a level of service that says, we have sidewalks, but we're not gonna plow them in the wintertime. Oh, that's a slippery slope, literally and figuratively, when you talk about that. So from a staff perspective, we've wrestled with it the same way we wrestled with, should there be mandatory storm sewer in all the subdivisions? You're filling in all the ditches that are there. We're a groundwater-based community. That's how the water gets back to your well. There's some pros and cons. If it's landscaped properly, it should not be an issue. So those are the positions that we've taken. We've taken the same approach with sidewalks. Is if a developer comes to us and says, I think the nature of my subdivision demands that it has a sidewalk, and I'm willing to incur that cost, so be it. Great. Heritage up off the Pettingill is an example. Felt that the level of development, it's going to be connected to the existing sidewalk network. We feel that it's marketability. He can choose to do that. He's got $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 houses up there. Somebody who's got a $250,000, $300,000 home just getting into their first mortgage, if they can save $10,000 because they don't have a sidewalk in front of their place, that's what makes this community attractive as it is. So it's balancing that demand that we see. And to build off of the demand side of things, we don't get a lot of demand for sidewalks, so to speak. You go to any, and I've said it before, you go to pretty much any of the local subdivision streets, in the middle of the day, there's no traffic. You can lay down on the road, nobody's gonna run you over. As long as you're not laying down between 7 and 9 in the morning and 4 and 6 o'clock at night. And our transportation master plan recognizes that, and that's why we're looking at that hierarchy. I personally don't think we're at a stage that it's a mandatory or must-have in this community. Just being able to manage them after the fact is not worth it. But I do think that an integrated approach of trail systems, widened walking lanes, easily maintained facilities, it's going to have a much bigger economic impact, a much bigger benefit, much more efficient use of our resources than dedicated sidewalks. That's just my opinion, and we followed that for the last little while when we looked at the evolution of our subdivision specifications. If council gives me alternate direction, says, no, we want to see sidewalks, and we're willing to take the chance that developers are going to find it too expensive, or we recognize the fact that we're going to have to put in equipment and manpower to maintain this after the fact. Again, I serve at the will of council, and your desire for the standard that you want to see is there. But at this stage of the game, you've tasked myself and my department with looking for the most efficient way to use our resources. At this stage of the game, I cannot recommend sidewalks, mandatory sidewalks in subdivision developments, unless the developer proposes it on their own.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. I'm going to ask for a motion now to break for lunch for about 35 minutes, so we'll be back by about 12:35. And because we are enclosed, I do not require a seconder for that. So it's been moved by Councillor Olson that we break for lunch on the question. Show of hands, please. Motion carried. So we will see you back at about 12:35. Thank you very much.